Happy Sunday. Welcome back to Retake the Week. Although this is a very special episode. This is Retake the Year. Most of the common segments you've come to expect from the show will not be a part of it because we just have far too much stuff to talk about. And also, there's not been any real CS. The Eternal Shuffle had to scrap it. We're going to be doing an entire Roster Mania episode next week because, well, it's the midst of Roster Mania right now. But for this episode, we're going to be taking a look at 2024, discussing everything that went down, pretty much doing a massive recap with top players, top teams, top coaches, top everything, and also doing the end of year Q&A because this is the final episode of this month as well as this year. So we have the Q&A questions asked by, of course, the people who make this show happen, the members. Now, the members do get access to a bunch of extra content, the right to ask questions in the Q&A, and the right to have a direct input onto content decisions. So this is what you get from the £2 a month bottom tier. There's also a higher tier, working on trying to integrate more of that into the content. I was thinking of bringing potentially some conversation type live streams on, primarily for those sorts of higher level donators in the members. But we'll see about that when the Discord starts popping a little more. So yeah, members, thank you again for making the show viable for the entire year. You're the reason it's actually on Spotify. But let's get back to it. Quacke, Merry Christmas.
Thank you.
Soon to be Happy
Merry
New
Christmas.
Year.
Yep.
How was 2024 for you?
It was a very good year. A lot of esports. I've probably forsaken a lot of other things to the favor of my interest in esports this year. So that's the other things being my studies. But it's been a good year, especially in an esports context. It's been a very good year. But yeah, it's been very. How was your 2024? Next week it's going to be 2025.
It's been surprising, let's say. I came into the year with this channel being in a very specific place, which was meh. I'm going to be honest. Like, the content wasn't quite hitting. We'd started a few cool ideas, and the shows that have grown throughout this year have been, already at that point that were started. They just hadn't really blossomed. And so, for me, 2024 has been a very interesting year in terms of growth, in terms of, the channel blowing up towards the end, especially. It's been fun. It's been interesting. Also, met my girlfriend this year. So everything's changed. Like this time last year, I was single, probably just about as good looking, except I had a beard instead of a moustache. Little things. And yeah, no, it's been a good year. And the esports has been fun. I think we were deprived, I think. This year had the potential. Multiple teams had the rosters to be an actual era-defining team. And I think we'll probably end up discussing at various points why they end up completely fucking failing those ambitions. But because none of the teams who had the roster for an era really this year came close to it. But we have to start with some Q&A questions. We do have a couple questions here. The first one from Is No Good 67. Some of you may recognize that nickname if you're avid Forest fans. What product do you use to keep your mustache so luscious? I'm going to be blunt. Nothing. I don't consider my mustache luscious. And if it is, it's not my doing. So it's just water, bar of soap, and at some point this ends up the way it is. Like, there's not much to it. Quack, do you do anything special for your mustache?
No, I mean, this question was obviously for me. But
yes,
no.
we know who asked it. It's definitely for you.
It's very... No, it's just no, nothing.
No, I think you need a lot thicker, longer sort of mustache for it to actually warrant that attention. I don't think it's.
Yeah, I kind of wish I could go for that like Magnum PI mustache. What's his name? Like, I forget the actor's name. But,
Tom Selleck.
Tom Selleck, yeah. I wish
you might want to, also, if you want to look like Tom Selleck, it's more than the tash, though, isn't it?
It's so much more than a tash, but I wish, just the tash would have been enough. But then, yeah, no, I can't do that. At least not now. Maybe when I'm old and gray, maybe that's where I'll be. Tune in for Retake the Week episode 6,000.
Live from the retirement home.
Oh, God.
Just honestly, that episode would be a lot of us going, "What's his name? What's his name? Fucking, what's his name?" Already would have forgotten everything.
We'd still be going on about like they should sign Hooksy. Like he's
Hooksy
been
was
benched.
underrated in his time. Just throws fucking medicine at each other.
Oh, amazing. Yep.
No, that would be fun. But yeah, that's essentially our secret. Nothing. Because we don't have that kind of tash. Next question from SnaysNay196. Why are you such a nerd? Honestly, nerds are just a thing I think that most people end up being by default. They just don't realize it. It's pretty, like, through time, what is defined as a nerd is basically it's around what interest happens to be considered nerdy. Everyone ends up being a nerd. Like, a motherfucker who knows every Premier League football transfer and goes to the pub wearing a football shirt and shouts at the TV is a nerd, as much as we are. He just doesn't know how Windows works. Like, it's a different fucking... it's a different interest. It's a different obsession. It's a different weird obsession, to be real. Like, you're shouting at grown men on a TV. But it's still an obsession in the same way that nerds who like video games and computers are, or comics. So I think nerd is just the default state for 99% of people.
It is, yeah. I think everybody I've ever met has been a nerd about something.
Yeah.
At least for a time. I think everybody has some sort of interest. These days, I think it's sort of shifting where like the slightly derogatory term for this before nerd used to be it. Now I think it's more like you have some sort of like a on the spectrum special interest. That's what people are starting to say about
Sure,
it. It's
yeah.
like my new special interest is trains or whatever. I mean that would be kind of on. I mean yeah, but like it's a that's what people are now saying about knitting or whatever. Like you, so. Yeah,
You could be a nerd about knitting. Like it's
no, you can't. But now these days, the zeitgeist term for it would be to say that you're on the spectrum for knitting or something similar. That's your whatever. Come on,
I can't be dealing with this sort of thing. The self-diagnosed like autism stuff.
Yeah,
because gets on my fucking nerves. Like, you haven't met autistic people. You just like something. Grow up.
Yeah, yeah. You just like something. You literally just like something. You like knitting.
Yeah, it's cool. It's cool.
Yeah,
knit something.
yeah.
I'd like a jumper, please. Like,
yeah, please.
But yeah, that's kind of my take on all that, because I have been a nerd, a geek, since like my teenage years. After I stopped, I was already being called a nerd whilst I was still playing every sport, which was always a bit of a weird spot for me. But like, that's just a natural part, I think, of the human experience is to be a nerd.
Yeah.
So I think with those two layup questions that don't take too much thought or too much sweat and arguing out the way, let's get into the top 25 players of the year. Now, we've broken this down across the show because the show's going to be long and it'd get really tedious if we just did 25 to 1 in one block. So we're doing 25 to 15 because I've considered this section like the honorable mentions. The reason I say this because I haven't ordered 16 to 25. I think I have just like 10 players written down. Let me make sure I actually have 10 players. Because I'm so picky and dickish that I might have just not put enough players in.
We could genuinely go that I go for it. Mine are ordered, so like I could go in reverse order and like you could just pick one randomly off your list as I go up. So
no, I'm just gonna let you discuss, and if we match, I'll discuss it as well. And if we don't, I'll tell you that you're wrong, etc.
All right, should I go then?
Who's your number 25?
My number 25 is I debated this between a bunch of different ones, but I actually ended on Brollan because I think Brollan has had a kind of neat year. Yeah, sorry, I thought that was a reaction to to me picking Brollan. No, I was kind of between. It could have been Brollan, it could have been Naf. It probably could have been Zontex, but I kind of ended on Brollan because as much as he has been kind of nowhere in some games, he's been kind of nowhere in some events. He's also kept kind of a high floor, and he did have a couple of games and a couple of events where he was sort of one of the deciding factors. And like, he's kind of still up there with the other mouse players. So I put Brolin as my 25th. You probably don't have him in your top 25, I would assume.
No, of course I don't. Because why would I? Look, let's be real. He's been aggressively mid for the majority of the year. He's got a couple standout events, and that's it. Like, there's a couple standout events, and the rest of the time, like, he oscillates between like a low 1.0 rating and a 0.9 something. Like, he's just been a very mediocre player. And considering they've needed him to do more, realistically, in a lot of big games, I couldn't, in my right mind, consider him a top 25 player. Plus, the fragging numbers just aren't there.
Yep.
Like,
Right.
just for the year, without any additional context, without adding, big events, without adding, sorry, this is with big events on, but without adding, like, playoffs only or adding prestige events only sort of stats in, he's already sub 0.7 in KPR. And I'm like, that's just a guy who's not doing enough for me. Like, on the rifle front, like, I need more.
Yeah.
I need way more for him to be in consideration.
I threw him in as an afterthought because I had 24, and then I realized I kind of need a 25th to round it out. So it was between him. I think maybe Naf or Zontix should have taken.
I think Naf would have been I mean, Naf is in my section hit. Like,
yeah,
Naf has been really strong.
Naf or Stown probably could have taken it. If Stown is one of those low map count, but Naf. The thing that kind of kicked it for Naf for me is that I think he's been kind of dog shit every time Liquid have made it to playoffs. So like they've lost a lot of their first playoff games, and then a lot of times it's Naf is really good, but then that game he kind of falls off.
Yeah, but the reason I give credit to Naf, because a lot of people are going to now dive into the stats and be like, but Naf also has a 0.6 at KPR. Naf isn't playing Brolan roles.
Yeah, no.
Everything Naf does is basically fucking bonus in terms of how you want your team to operate. He does not have those sorts of basically opportunities, and he's been pretty damn impressive. So, yeah. Naf is also a player that I wouldn't consider very highly, like, for the year, because obviously he doesn't have that many carry jobs. He doesn't have, an iconic series or two to, like, really propel him deep into a top 20. Like, if you don't have any iconic series over the course of a year, realistically, it's like, nice, you played your job, but it's not. That's especially also where Brolan sits, because Bro had one maybe iconic series that I can picture in my head.
Yeah.
Everything else has just been... Brolan's also on the team, that kind of vibe.
Yeah. Next up, 24th, I actually have Twists, and this is sort of the same thing as Naf. They've been very even, Twists and Naf. Twists has better positions, of course, but Twists also has the added context of taking over the IGL role, and he's kept a decently high level. Like, he's been fairly comparable to a lot of the other players I have on the list. In a lot of stats, they've made several deep runs, especially with the way the team stepped up after he took over the reins. Like, that's something which kind of impressed me, taking over as a first-time IGL 9 years, like 8 or 9 years into his tier 1 career. Because that's something we talked about before, is like how obviously very few people are IGLs from the start, but tier 1 players moving into the IGL role it's not a successful prospect like that often. Snacks is debatable. It's been successful. I just don't think it's been successful for his doing. Apex has been really successful. And then that's sort of where the list ends. But Twists is like somebody, he's late enough where I would sort of almost put him in the same bracket, even if it's only 25, because he's been around for 8 years in tier 1. But that's sort of beside the point. He's played a great CT side. He's been really good in elimination series, and they've made 5 playoffs, including major playoffs right at the end. And most of them were with Twists over Cadian, and like that's a feather in his cap for me. Obviously, like, it's just a better roster that he had as well. I would consider the Falls roster to be quite a bit better than the Spring roster, but yeah, it is just. I give credit to Twist. Naf could maybe go above him, but with the context of being IGL, I kind of just had to put Twists above him.
Honestly, I would have been okay with you putting Twist even higher. I have him in that range as well, alongside Naf. I'd probably say he's had a better year, considering he's had to take over IGL duties, maintained for a lot of events his fragging output. Like, he's had a couple bad events over the course of the year, like where he's fragged like an IGL essentially, but for the most part, he's actually been very impressive, very impactful, actually able to deliver, which, considering how most IGLs do, should be respected. So Liquid, I think is after Dallas, right? That they switch from Cadian to Twist IGLing.
Yeah.
And from that point onwards, they still make playoffs at a lot of events. Twists frags well, like half the events they play after that. Like, that's a remarkable transition, and the fact that it hasn't entirely fallen off coming into the end of the year is what matters. Because after those 2 bad events, you're like, oh, maybe this is it. He's hit the wall, the IGL wall, where, like, finally it gets ugly. Finally, he starts resenting the responsibility. But no, Still had another good fragging event after that. Still made major playoffs. I think there's a lot of things you can say about Twist that are positive this year.
Yeah. Next honorable mention, 23rd, I have K Serrato, and this is a bit. He's had an off year. In one of his better past years, he probably would have made the top 20. He's still there. Like he still has like pretty damn good stats in big events. It's just they didn't make playoffs. They made one playoff and they got knocked out immediately. But he's still there. Like he's still there with a 112 on T side, 117 CT side, over 80 ADR across the year, 116 impact. He's got 2 EVPs. It's still baity. He's still 0.61 DPR, but yeah. He also falls off quite heavily against top 10, which is another reason why I didn't include him. But he's there, and he's there. He's had a, like by his own standards, it's a bad year, but for comparative to a lot of other players, it's definitely up there, I think. But I wouldn't have put him in the actual list, but he is in here with the honorable mentions. I had to consider him for the list, and so that's why he ends up being 23rd.
Yeah, I left him in the range just because I'm like, yeah, he's objectively talented and good.
Yeah.
Despite a complete lack of success from Furia. I'm not sure how much of it can be put down to him. Sure, he hasn't been truly elite as a rifler, but to say he's not one of the, like in terms of actual level of play, 10 best riflers in the world would be dishonest.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I understand it. I don't think he needs to go any higher at all. So,
no.
That's cool.
22nd, I had Torji, which was... It's basically that he's been decently consistent compared to past years, where I feel like he would drop off quite heavily in a couple of events. But he's kept a pretty high floor in that sense, but he doesn't really have the peaks. So I couldn't really include him in the actual list. You pointed out that he had very good like big event, like prestige event playoff stats.
Yeah.
Which is great.
Elite.
Yeah. He has a very good CT side. It's pretty much the only other stat I could put on him, even like compared to other oppers. It's actually interesting when I compared him to like Wonderful. He beats Wonderful CT side. He beats Brokey CT side. Like I think he even beats Shiro's CT side stats. Like comparing him to other oppers. Mm-hmm. And this is obviously it's a system issue. It's an IGL issue, but that's actually kind of impressive. I'm not upset that HLTV put him 20th. I think that's a kind of fair, especially with how he's done in big events. So yeah, but I had him 22nd. His stats are still quite mediocre. He doesn't find a lot of impact. He has low ADR, low KPR. Even compared to some of his peers, he gets beaten out by Wonderful and Brokey and the like. So this is sort of where he had to land, but he very well could have been on the list.
Right, so I have Torchi way fucking higher. And
yeah,
HLTV made the case for me basically in their notable stats, where he's 11th best rated at majors, 11th best rated at Super Elite events, 11th best rated in big matches. All big matches. He's the 11th best player. And this is considering he's a player who plays on a team that routinely absolutely shits the bed. And shits the bed from the first fight onwards, because Xertion is the ultimate bed shitter on their roster. So this is a guy who's constantly playing in disadvantaged situations, where the system completely fails in the big matches, in the playoffs, and he still delivers all his kills. He still manages to go out and find his impact. So I don't see how he can be this low. Like, there's going to be a bunch of players ahead of him who have everything perfectly set up for them, wonderful, and still can't match his fucking numbers. Like, still can't kill at the same rate in the playoffs, in the big events. So no, I think this is far too low. I still think HLTV's rating was too low. I have him in my top 15. I think Torchi's been criminally underrated. And no one's given him any real like leeway for the context of how this season's played out. One of his EVPs is Bet Boom. I haven't even considered Bet Boom events in my rankings because I do not give a shit. So any mouse sports credit that comes from Bet Booms has been ignored. All I care about is Torji was an absolute don when things were hard on a team that routinely turned to fucking putty and just smushed aside by every goddamn opponent in the playoffs. So I think that he needs to be taking a lot of credit for the few big playoff victories Mouse have actually managed to squeeze out.
Yeah, this is relevant for my next pick actually, so I'm going to save it for there. It's probably Torji has a bigger case in the discussion that I'm about to make. But my 21st pick, just about missing out on my list, is Rops. And this was because he was kind of fucking nowhere all year, except Shanghai happened. And like, then a lot of people rate Rops highly because he then performed really well in Shanghai. That's a really big peak. Across the year, his arena games are still quite bad. He drops off like 0.05 in arena games compared to his big event rating. But he goes high because of that peak. He goes high because of, that sort of play. For me, like the Shanghai peak, it's amazing, but he was nowhere in Copenhagen. So like it's kind of 1-1. And then he was not a deciding factor when FaZe won in Chengdu. He didn't even get an EVP. Like that was entirely Brokey and Frozen winning that event. He absolutely disappeared in a bunch of other events, and like other events where like FaZe realistically had a chance at like making the final, maybe even winning. It wasn't just Robs. His teammates were also kind of crap for a section of the year. Brokey was really bad in basically the whole fall season, and Frozen really dropped off in the major, for example. But like Robs wasn't there either. Like Robs was 0.04 in an event where FaZe probably could have won if he was better. So like, I just don't. I couldn't put him much higher, but I know some people have because he played big in the big games. And the argument that I have here is that I think Torji has a bigger leg to stand on when it comes to like the big game peaks than Robs does. And why I'm kind of discounting Robs is because there are so few big games and there's so many compounding factors that could just change this for you. So I in the sense of somebody who is really good but drops off in a few big games compared to somebody who has been quite mid but peaks in a few important games, I'd probably give more leeway to the one who isn't Rops. Like Rops is the latter. Like I'd probably give more leeway to the guy who had a couple of bad days more so than the one who had a couple of good days over the course of a whole year. So that's where we value things differently. I think if you're consistently really good in high pressure environments in really good events, good on you. That's great. And that's something I really value. But if it comes down to the Shanghai peak doing so much, I just can't really do that for Robs.
Well, the Shanghai peak was literally what it took to get them to a major final. It's not hyperbole. They are not even they're not even sniffing a victory in the quarterfinal without Rops playing out of his mind CS. And that's why the Shanghai peak has become so valuable. It's of the players this year that have managed to play in a grand final, maybe 2, maybe 3 others can say, I played that well to get to that grand final. And those 2 or 3, they're going to be 1, 2, 3, like almost without a doubt. So no, he deserves a lot of credit for all of a sudden going Super Saiyan and carrying a borderline dead roster over the line in those matches. He also deserves credit because, look, the numbers again in the massive games, the important games, matter so much more. They always will. The fact that you're able to overcome the teams who are, in the 10 spaces beneath you just to make playoffs is cool. But when you get to those playoffs, it's when it matters. That's when the pressure's higher. That's when you actually don't have room for mistakes. You can't be mid and still go through. And so the fact that he isn't mid when it comes to those games is what matters. Like, players who manage to make it work in a studio where playing kind of forgettable CS, but the other team is so bad, the rest of your roster can just muddle through anyway. Those players deserve, I think, a lot more scrutiny. Like maintaining a fine rating in those games and then completely fucking collapsing afterwards, I think is a real issue if you're supposed to be a star, which is what top 20 players should be. And Robs, yeah, for me, he goes far higher because he has been a star when stars are needed.
I mean, look, I see that. It's just I value things a bit differently because I can't really rate Santa Claus high on taking every day of the year off except for 3 days, which were the Shanghai playoffs. Like, it's
Santa Claus in 3 days delivers 7 billion plus presents. If you don't rate that guy as a goat of the Western canon, if he's not on your Mount Rushmore of the Western canon, you are, my friend, insane.
That's fair. No, but Robs has been Santa Claus for me this year, and I just I probably wouldn't have moved him much even if he didn't have the Shanghai peak. I probably still would have put him like 23rd. So it's just like, it's just the same. It feels fluky. It feels really fluky. Like it's an amazing peak, Imma had this peak last year in Paris. Like, we didn't put Imma anywhere close the top 20 last year.
Yeah, but did Imma for the entire year finish the top 10 player in big matches? Did he for the entire year finish number 4 in prestige event playoff KPR? Like, this is
anyway,
this is very different.
This is the issue for me anyway. We value things differently here. I'm going to move on because there's no conclusion to this, which is satisfying. And I'm going to enter the actual list now, which is where you can directly compare us to the HLTV list.
Yeah, you're at 20 now. Okay.
If you care about such a thing, number 20 is Senzu, and this is kind of a pet pick for me because I just kind of wanted to put him in. It's a lot of context about like where Mongols have been during the year and like the journey they've done and the part that Senzu has played in that. So it is a bit like there's very few players on this year's list who have like tier 2 play which needs to be considered, which is kind of impressive. It's basically, I think honestly, there's only a handful. And then it's mobs. But like for most everybody who is anywhere near making the list, they've played tier 1 play for all of the year. They didn't make a transfer. Mobs is the only one who made a transfer, I'm pretty sure. So at least to a tier 1 team, from a non-tier 1 team to a tier 1 team. Senzu has moved upwards. Mongols have moved into tier 1. And Senzu played a big part in that. I put him in because he actually maintains a pretty high level against top 10. He puts 107. He's good on both T and CT side. He's got good stats, good impact. They made the major playoffs in Shanghai, and Mongols have just taken such a journey where I'm a little bit upset they didn't put him in the actual list because there's no way he's going to go 16th or higher, so he's definitely out. I'm a little bit upset HLTV didn't put him there. For me, he is 20th and he couldn't go any higher, but he's there. Good in elimination series as well, 113. So I just have to give a lot of credit to them. And also like, as much as their big event calendar has been kind of small, I do give some credit to the stuff that they actually have won outside. I think the Thunder pick thing, that's a neat win for a team like Mongols. I think like Yala Compass, that's a neat win for a team like Mongols. Like these events, they wouldn't move the needle for anyone else, but for a Mongols player, that's good. And that's what makes him 20th, in my opinion.
Okay, this is absurd. For me, these sorts of things have to reflect the year. If I go forward, it's 10 years' time, I look back and I'm like, why is Senzu 20th? Because Thunderpick and Yala Compass. I'm going to throw a brick at someone, and that someone is you. Because what the hell are we talking about?
It's also major playoffs for sure as well.
He made major playoffs.
With an Asian team. The first time ever.
Off whose back did he make major playoffs?
Yeah, I mean,
not his. Yeah. He's not exclusively carried a team to major playoffs. That would be the viable point. He played under his level in that major opening stage.
Yeah.
9-10 Mazzino, especially considering who he is on the roster, made that happen. Yeah. This is for me a massive overvaluing of the year, considering he plays a bunch of big events. Only 4 of them he plays well. 2 of those are Pro League. No, one of them's Pro League, one of them's EWC. Like, he plays 5 maps. Like,
EWC I do not consider. He did not make the playoffs. He played 5 best of ones, and that was it. I think maybe he played.
He finished 9th. I thought I read that as 5th to 8th. I'm going to be honest. But yeah, no, this is a ridiculous inclusion.
It is a ridiculous pick. It is a ridiculous inclusion.
As far as how we look upon years of Counter-Strike in history, like when we go back and we think, how did this year play out? Who were the 25 players of this year? A guy who barely attended any of the big events, didn't play that well. He had to play way better than this at those events to really qualify.
It is the context
absurd
of
inclusion.
Asia. It's the Asia context which puts him in.
They just put Blitz in there. Like, what are we talking about?
Yeah, it could just as well have been Blitz. Could just as well have been.
Well, no, not just as well, because there's got to be a case. And the case
is the case is they did it. The case is they did it from fucking out of nowhere. In reality, he probably should have been my 25th. He probably should have been. But I just wanted him. I wanted to manifest him being on the HLTV top 20 list, and that's why I put him here.
Okay. Yeah. Absurd, but okay.
Yeah. Yep. Next up is a Liege, number 19. I just don't think he had the map count. He has the stats to go top 10, but he didn't do it in anywhere near enough the amount of maps, and I think it's a travesty. He is a finalist for Opener of the Year when Mobs isn't. But he made 1 run, and it was good. And then the rest, he's been a group stage merchant, but he's been excellent in group stages. Yeah. So that's basically the case for him. He's really good, but he like he would have been top 10 if complexity was decent. And if he maintains this level next year when he moves to phase / G2 / whatever else, he is going to be top 10 if he could maintain that level. But I don't think he does. But yeah,
if he plays at this level on a team that has a remote chance of making playoffs, remote, he's not top 10, he's top 5. Like this is an absurd fragging year for Rifle. This is why I actually have him higher. He has actually played some of the best Counter-Strike any Rifle's played all year. It's just that he's been playing with 2 of the worst Riflers to be consistently attending big events.
Yes.
An AWPer who doesn't move the needle enough. Like he has his moments, but realistically,
he is the average. He is the average.
Pretty much, yeah. And then an IGL who we try to give credit to, but at some point, like that we know he's not able to make more of this team than it is. And that is Elige versus the fucking world. Like, actually ridiculous. His ratings are absurd. His kills, that's what's fucking like really carried this week. His KPR and ADR and all this stuff, the stuff that matters for riflers. His ability to win opening fights consistently. Like he's tuned himself into the meta in order to be able to carry a team as best as possible. And it's still not enough because fucking Grim and Floppy, Holzerk and JT is just the rest of his team. His team is not good enough. Put him on phase, and he's actually not just a top 10 player, a top 5 player. Just with that level of playoff appearance, he doesn't even have to actually win them anything extra. He's a top 5 player of the year if he has all those playoff runs. That's how good his fragging has been.
Yeah, but like they don't make anything. They didn't play a single arena game. The playoff run they had was in EPL, and they had a free quarterfinal there, if I remember correctly. So they made top 4. Free might be an exaggeration, but I think it was Virtus Pro, and they were kind of shit at that point. So, in any case, they didn't have a big leg to stand on. Something I have to give them credit for. They were 9th to 11th in both majors, which that's very close. If they make playoffs in both of them, I think it's an entirely different year. Like if they win that game, but it's I don't. No, I can't put Elige much higher because he just doesn't have the map count this year. He's been excellent, but he doesn't have the map count, and that's what it comes down to. Anyway, that's my 19th pick. I'm gonna move on to number 18. Wonderful, and this is one which I feel myself now regretting because I feel like it might not be entirely legitimate. But I did put him here mostly on awards. I did put him here mostly because he won stuff. He had standout performances in the events that they won. And that's kind of where I'm going to end it because I don't have much more in favor of that. And you can pick it apart now.
Yeah. So spring season. This is the story of Na'Vi, but it's also the story of Wonderful. Spring season, this team had one event which they won, and we all know it's objectively a fluke. And during that time period, they were immensely inconsistent, despite, in theory, having quite a good like foundation to the roster and all that good stuff. And it's in part because individuals like Wonderful were able to be so totally useless in the games where they underperformed. I don't mean like, oh, he had a bad game. Just a bad game. No. He had terrible games and then good games. And it was absurd, like the way it fluctuated. And if you watch a Wonderful demo and you come out of it, like if you pick up like a Wonderful 1.2 rated demo where they win like a Mirage, and you watch him, he's just kind of there. And he hits the occasional easy shot, and then you think, wait, demo's over. He's 14-9. This is a 1.3 rating now. He barely fucking played. And that's the problem that I have with Wonderful, is he's been incredibly systematic, hasn't been able to really elevate the team when they've struggled, and has ended up waltzing into some EVPs, and the team has won titles, but he as an individual has been so forgettable this year. Ends with one of the lowest prestige playoff KPRs of all the players I tracked, which for a player who's supposedly on the sure thing lock team of the year whilst AWPing, seems a bit ridiculous. So yeah, DPR farming, basically AFK. I can't have this guy anywhere higher than like somewhere in the 20s. Like he's an honorable mention, just because he has to be almost, but he should not be that high. If I had to put a number on it, 25 would probably feel about appropriate.
Yeah. AS Arena games are 104, which is a drop off from 111. That's not good. I'm gonna move on. Next pick, Zershan, and this is funny. I've put him in 17th. When I was first making my list, I put Jimmy in 17th, because I did feel like Jimmy drops off quite hard. He doesn't have like the statistical impact that some of his teammates do. For example, Zershan, who takes a lot of openings, he takes a lot of multi-kills and such. Jimmy is more of almost a little bit OP. Like he does kind of just, he's a bit of a machine in the sense that he gets 1 or 2 here, and he doesn't have like the huge rounds a lot of the time, in my opinion. Zershan doesn't really either, but I did put Jimmy here first. But then after I thought about it, I thought, well, Jimmy plays a lot of tougher positions. He plays a lot of different responsibilities. And I put Jimmy higher, and I put Zershan here because Zershan goes from a 113 to a 0.98 in arena games.
Yeah.
There's only one player. I think that might be the biggest out of the candidates I consider. I think that might be the biggest arena drop off with anyone who has more than like 5 maps in arenas.
Comfortably, because
I think honestly,
yeah.
the only one who drops off more in terms of pure rating is and there's 2 more actually. And actually no, there's only one. And in terms of pure rating, and that's Donk, but that's because he has a redonkulous rating to begin with. And he drops up to a 127. Like, it's not bad. But in terms of like actual margin, how much you're moving, Zershan is the highest. He drops 13% from big events to arenas. That's just horrible. So I kind of had to put him here. He does still have the peaks. Like, he still has the huge games where he goes bonkers.
Yeah, he has those great Pro League runs, guys. In those big arenas at Pro League.
Yeah.
ESL's signature event of the year, fucking Pro League. In front of 3 people and a fucking rat in Malta. Yeah, he's great
He has a great CT side. Decent in elimination games. I can move him higher. Maybe could move him lower.
Definitely could move him lower. Holy crap. Oh my god. This is the guy over Elige? Yeah. I'd rather you never make playoffs than play this fucking terribly in big arenas. Holy crap, what a travesty. No, he's genuinely been the problem. Like, Maus don't have really a choking problem. They have Zershan. That's kind of been the story of the year when you actually think about it, because he takes a lot of important fights, and you've got to give him credit for making those fights happen in the group stage, like winning those fights, actually hitting his shots. But then as soon as a real crowd appears, like all of a sudden, his right hand just breaks. Like, it just doesn't work anymore. He can't hit a damn thing. So it's a historic fall off, and it's the sort of thing where you look at the raw numbers and you'd be mistaken. You'd foolishly be like, oh, this has to be one of the like almost 10 best players in the world. Like, he's so much impact, such great fragging numbers. What a great rifler. Then as soon as you examine his playoff series, you're like, oh, who is this fucking Joel Embiid? Like, the fuck is going on? Like, where'd he go in the playoffs?
Yeah,
nowhere, just nowhere. Outside of like basically a closed environment, he's been hopeless. So it's frustrating because with a performing Zershan, this team probably wins a few events. This team probably is a bigger threat. It's not just like, oh, they are 5th or 6th this year. Better than everyone else below them, but not a chance of winning anything. They actually realistically could be in contention over and over again for big events if they had their entry fragging.
Yeah, they had two events that they definitely could and maybe even should have won if Zershan actually managed to perform. But he was dog shit in the Chengdu final. It was 0.79. Where they played another final, which was Rio, and it's not the biggest event, but like in the Rio final, Zershan was 0.90. Like, I can't say his teammates are that much better, but Jimmy was at least above 1.0 in both of those series.
And the point I was making earlier of basically just like, how are certain players supposed to really perform besides literally breaking the game to another level when they start most rounds a man down?
Yeah.
Like, it's asking a lot for a team to win 4v5s at a 40% click, essentially, to try and win events. Yeah,
that's why I have him 17th. And then for my 16th, I have Xantares, and this is one which I think is extremely hard to rate. I think he has been excellent. He does have a drop-off against top 10, and he didn't play a lot. But the interesting thing about the Xantares Elige comparison is that Xantares played fewer maps, and probably fewer events overall. But Xantares made 1 major playoff and 1 grand final, beat an EPL, but he still did beat Vitality to get there. Took a map off the best team in the world in that said final. So, like, that's impressive. Elige had nowhere near that amount of achievement, despite playing more big events. So it is difficult to rate him, but I have put him 16th because this is the final one before we get into like the proper list, and at that point it gets hard to put him above some other players who did more in other map. Yeah, but anyway, he's here. He's got an amazing ADR. He's got a great impact. He's got a great T side and CT side rating. He's an amazing opening player. He probably could have been a finalist in opener of the year, but he has only 54 big event maps, so that's why he doesn't really make it much higher. He does have a major EVP from Copenhagen.
Yeah,
I do care. That's a standout performance in the first CS2 major. That's impressive.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to say it as standout performance, say it as standout performance. Don't tell me someone else gave him an award. Like, you know.
I'm just saying I would have given the same award. That's what I mean.
No, just say that.
Yeah.
Like, Xantares for me is essentially number 16. It was between him and someone else for 15, and I eventually caved to external pressures, let's say, in terms of what matters. Because as an individual, the way he's played when he's actually been at big events has been top class. He has been outstanding.
Do you know something interesting? Do you remember in the Copenhagen quarterfinal we all said Eternal Fire was going to beat Navi?
Yeah, I did.
We all said that, and Xantares was nowhere in that quarterfinal, and Navi ended up winning.
That's probably the biggest letdown of the year at that point. Like, it wasn't very far into the year, but still, at that point, I was like, oh, what the fuck, man.
They probably lose to G2 either way. Like, I'm not sure Eternal Fire could take
almost definitely
G2 at that point. Yeah, but that's a top 4 at a major, and suddenly Xantares is looking good for like approaching the top 10, in my opinion. Like, honestly, he would end up probably being 13th on my list if they had won that game. But he disappeared in that game and they didn't win. And
damn, single event peaks really seem to matter in your list. Like, just one extra BO3 for 3 places.
It's because that's an entirely different thing. That's a major top 4. That is a major top 4. But then also like the extra ramifications of who actually ends up winning the major in that case are kind of insane. But that's not something I would consider. But it's just that's if he played as great as he has done in the first CS2 major quarterfinal, then that's just I think that's a different storyline.
Yeah, we know it's a very different picture. We don't have to have Navi Fluke conversations. But anyway.
That would be interesting. It'd probably be a phase win then. Maybe even a G2 win. Wow. All right, yep.
Right, so that's 25 to 16. Up next, we're taking a bit of a break now from this top list because we have just spent 35 straight minutes on it. We now have a question from hersweetmoon. 2 questions, and we're deciding to answer both because we ain't got nothing but time on our hands. Do either of you have music that you like a lot because it's very associated with something or person or memory? Quacke, I'll let you take the lead on that. Is anything come to mind?
I listen to a lot of music, and sometimes I do just sort of something just clicks, and it has various reactions. I remember, I think one moment is like one of the songs from the Cars movie. For some reason, it was like it was a really rough period. Like, it was when I had family members who had passed and everything, and then suddenly I just found that song for the first time in like 10 years. And yeah, that was a big moment, and it's a big moment song for me ever since. That's a bit of a mopey answer. I do have others. I just can't think of them off the top of my head. That's the one that appears.
Yeah, for me, it's more of a
lot of songs just mean something to me. Like, I associate them with someone or an event or something like that. It's just not really as powerful as the question might imply. Like, the question might imply it's like, oh, a friend I lost or something. No, it's not that deep. It's more so I had fun that day and I listened to this song. It's something like that.
Yeah, see, for me, like, there's music that reminds me of a specific time because I remember listening to it for the first time, essentially, whilst doing something. Like, one year towards Christmas, me and my family were visiting my grandparents, and they were living in, well, we call it the arsehole of the world, like, because it's the middle of nowhere. No one's there. But it's near some mountains, so we went skiing. And I had some new CDs, and so did my dad, because this was back when CDs were still a big thing. And so we were listening to our new CDs in the car. And so specifically, we're driving up a mountain in the snow, and we're listening to Wolfmother's Cosmic Egg album. And the track California Queen, I believe it's called. That specifically is just tied to that moment. But there's nothing nothing particularly powerful. Like, I remember which songs made me a metalhead, like, through time. Like, shout out Hatebreed, shout out Rammstein, but like, there's not much. There's nothing super super deep in terms of specifically tying me to people and memories beyond that sort of thing. You know, like you mentioned, like I remember things I did on a day when I hear a song and be like, oh yeah, that was this day. This day like kind of had this song.
Yeah.
But it's very few in number, and none of it's particularly like strong for me. Like it's just a fact rather than anything else.
Yeah, if I'm gonna give a couple like actual songs which you could go listen to, the one I'm thinking about is "Find Yourself" by Brad Paisley, from Cars, because that's the one where I just found it for the first time in 10 years and was just like sobbing in the middle of the night. And then "Goodie Bag" by Still Woozy, I found when I had just met my girlfriend, so that's sort of like the same era in time, and that's kind of special. Uh, it kind of ends there. I think and then I just have banger songs that like then I just have songs that I consider to be bangers. Um, there's one more, but you're not gonna be able to spell this. Strövtåg I hembygden by Mando Diao. It's one of their biggest hits. If you just go to Mando Diao, it's gonna be up there. That's another one of those, which is like, oh, my dad, that sort of thing. Yeah.
All right, I have a song that reminds
Yeah.
me of your dad.
My dad.
Yeah, I'm joking. Anyway, there's also a more serious question attached from hersweetmoon, which is, who are your top 10 pairs of players for 2034, or top 5 you're feeling pressed for time? I'm going to do top 5 because I do think top 10. Firstly, I didn't prep this, so it'd be off the top of my head, and also we have already quite a lot to go through this episode. So I was thinking, firstly, you've got a couple choices, but it has to be Monacy and Nico in terms of the duo from G2. Like you think Malbs and his impact he's had on the year is impressive, but Monacy Nico is the duo that made that team like actually pop. In terms of playoffs and in terms of big events, Flame Z and Zhou have been the vitality duo, and I feel they deserve a lot of credit for that. On the same sort of note, for me, Bit and JL have been the Na'Vi pair for the year. It has to be Shiro and Donk, even if you like in that pairing, you're like Shiro feels like way lower than Donk. He still probably has been like a top 6-7 player of the year. Like, in a lot of big playoff games, you see some of the events where they make like a deep run. The ones that aren't the super prestige events, Shiro's right up there with Donk. Like, he's actually been able to find huge series throughout the year. We just don't give him as much credit because he has just as many fall-offs. Then finally, give me Blitz and Mara. I don't care if Mara's not a player. Give me fucking Mara. Of course, absolute fucking hate crime that Mara doesn't end up making the shortlist of Coach of the Year from HLTV. Clearly another fraudulent award ceremony, like the Oscars, like the Grammys. Just complete gibberish. Not worth paying attention to. Watch this show instead. HLTV frauds.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's the same. It has to be Nico Monacy. It has to be Donkin Shiro.
Probably ordering could be improved. I just said them as they came.
Yeah. You could make a case for something like JL and Alexi V or something like that if you don't just want to go for like pure performance. I think Alexi V has had a big impact on the year, and I think it's JL and Alexi V who somehow build that team. Like they make up the base of the Navi team.
I think that's fair.
Yeah. Zaiwu Flame C for sure. Apex Zaiwu is also always a duo you can speak about, but yeah. I think I'm gonna give the 5th spot. Like it's hard to pick a duo for me in Mongols because I think all of them raise the floor. Like I Blitz and Mizinho, but then you could also say Blitz and 910. You could say Senzu could throw in there, even Techno. Like they're very much cohesive in that sense. It's hard to pick a pair. So I might just give it to Liquid instead and say Naf and Twists, because I think Naf and Twists have been excellent all year, and it's been those two for Liquid.
I think that's actually probably one of the better actual duos. Like, yeah.
Because if we're going for a duo, that's one of the duos of all time. But definitely for this year as well, that's definitely one of them. I'm trying to look downwards and see if I can find another one for the whole year. Like, you could give
me Electronic and Jame anyway.
Yeah. I mean, you can maybe, if you're delusional, you can maybe give it to Fuzi and Susp or some shit like that. But like, no, it's not going to be for the whole year. If we're talking top 10 level, then it's probably going to have to be those.
Grim and floppy.
Honorable.
I mean, the things they've managed to do, like holding back a liege for the rest of the scene's sake, is just such a noble effort.
I was considering taking something like Snacks and Hunter for being the weight of G2, like on Nico and Monacy's shoulders.
Yeah,
like,
preventing the G2 era. Thank you so much, Snacks and Hunter.
Snacks and Hunter have been hugely impactful this year, just in the wrong direction. It's been.
Yeah, everyone else a chance to win events. Yeah.
Yeah, you could just as well pick those. Like Cadian and Bro.
No, that's too far. That's too far.
Yeah, okay.
Everyone choked on that fucking team as soon as they touched playoffs. Like, sniffed the fucking stage. Stown all of a sudden turns back into fucking, like, I don't know, a tier 3 player. But let's...
Adasdochi and U-Jerks for absolutely blowing up Saw.
for that one event, and then deciding to leave.
And then disappearing, yeah.
All right, let's talk about top 5 IGLs. It's been quite the year for IGLs. Like, we were talking about, like, a good part of the year defined by the guy who has to be an IGL of the year. I refuse to accept any other answer from you. I don't care how hipster you're feeling today.
No,
how mid-parted your hair is. I don't care. You can't pick anyone but LXEV at number 1. But let's go from, like, I guess I've got a 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 going. Who's your number 5?
My number 5 is actually Twists, and we've already touched upon this. I think he's impressed. This is not like he was the absolute best one. Maybe not even the 5th best one. It is more so the context of transitioning to the IGL role for the first time, so deep into a career, which is just really impressive to me. Like, that's something which some players have tried, not a lot have succeeded in, and so far it's looked pretty good. And maybe there's not the biggest tactical depth. I just think Twists, he has a lot of confidence in that sort of role, and especially considering how much doubt that move had over the summer. Like, we sort of forget that when the news came out that Liquid were considering going for Twists IGL instead of, keeping Yakindar or signing somebody else, that was like a big what the fuck are they doing? But then it kind of just worked out. Like it worked. It's worked out pretty well. And Liquid, I'm bullish on Liquid for next year. So
with
that's
nuts,
my 5th.
Ooh, with nuts.
Yeah,
that's gonna be special. It's gonna be fun. I'm joking. I mean, I don't want to make that sound super sarcastic. I actually think it's interesting.
Who's your 5th pick?
I got Apex. I kind of have to like have him in there. I think Twist's a fair pick, but he's not made my list. I've stuck mostly very mainstream, very uptight. The other guy I considered at 5 was Kixan. As much as some people are like, not sold on Kixan, it's like, I am. So there we are. In terms of also just the meta of what an IGL has to be, he can shoot people. A lot of IGLs can't. That's something I actually value. But instead I have Apex, because Apex does actually have ridiculous explosive fragging numbers, which almost justifies him playing some CT style roles over Flamesy. Almost, not entirely. I'm still kind of peeved about a few of them. But with the addition of Rops, I think, and Flamesy taking some of Spinks' CT roles, we'll have a far stronger balance on that next year. But I still think, Apex deserves it. He's made a lot of good mid-round calls. Number 4.
Yeah, I had Apex as an honorable mention, but number 4 is going to be Chopper for me. It's not necessarily that he is...
Same.
Yeah. He hasn't been the outright best. I don't think Chopper has shown excellent tactical ability, but this is more so to do with like building a team and building a system around Donk, which, like, as much as Donk is an eternal presence in the way that he plays, I think Chopper, in combination with Halley to a degree, have built a system which very successfully, makes that work with the players they have. Then, of course, it hasn't been perfect. They could have done so much better, but I'm gonna put him there because it just as well could have failed so hard. Like, it just as well could have been Donk completely crumbled. And it made it work. Chiro and Donk working together, that's awesome. When it works, Zontix has been great. So I'm gonna put Chopper here, and I have seen some good stuff from him as well. Like when you're watching games, you have a couple of moments where it's like, that was a great call. That was definitely Chopper's doing.
Yeah, he's had a few key events. The Blast Spring Finals were an event they won, but they actually won off the back of, firstly, balanced star play, but also some really well-called rounds. So I think Chopper does deserve some credit for those sorts of wins. Not the most spectacular year overall, because they did have some lows, and I know Halley kept tanking his fucking stock by coming out being like, I got the mental prep wrong, and that pissed me off, so I'm like, just shut up then. If you keep getting involved in mental prep and it's going wrong, stop talking about it. But I think all in all, Hallie's not. I mean, I'm kind of tilted about the Coach of the Year nominations, but Chopper and Hallie deserve a certain amount of credit. It's not free. You can't just put
no.
Donk on the server and just be like, all right, cool, win. Because, well, they kind of did that a couple of events and it didn't work.
Yeah, and so many other star players who maybe don't necessarily come, reach the level of Donk, but definitely comparable, like in potential. Very high performance players. They have just been stuck into servers and, let's see what happens, and it just doesn't work. So there is a level of effort needed to be put in by the IGL and the coach to make this work. So props to that.
Yeah, number 3, I've got Blitz. If you don't have Blitz in your top 5, it's fraudulent. Yes, let's fucking go. Finally, you're thinking. Let's go. Quacke. I mean, we have to give Blitz credit for, firstly, the fragging, because for the first half of the year, it's still a very Blitz-oriented system. Like, it's still very much Blitz, win the round. Open it, mid-round it, and close it, which is a lot to ask. And over the course of the year, he has been able to elevate the player of his, develop, along with Mora, his fellow player, to the point where he's no longer having to force himself into every stage of the game in order to make it work. The openings are being far better handled now by Mazzinho, by Senzu, CT side by 910. And he's just mostly closing rounds. Like, him and Techno are like the two riflers who are most likely to be alive late. And he's done a great job in terms of just developing this roster into something special, making the right calls for them, getting them on board and truly leading. And then also, he's able to frag. Like, he's in contention for number 1. I had to... The fact that I've put him in... I'm pretty sure we have the same number 2 as well, because there's no way you haven't put Alexi at 1. Otherwise, I will travel to Sweden just to slap you.
We probably have the same one.
But I think Blitz 3, it could have been Blitz 2. It wasn't much for me. It's just a... Maybe add something to the trophy cabinet, because of the year, I need to consider history. And I need a little bit more just winning. But next year, don't worry. Next year, if they continue on this trajectory, Blitz might even be IGL of the year. They might end up with a couple of players in the top 20. Like, that's, I think, realistic if the trajectory holds, their level holds. But all right, do you have anything to add to Blitz, or do you want to take us away with number 2?
No, it's sort of the same thing that I said about Senzu. It's the context of having done it with Mongols specifically, which maybe applies even more to Blitz than to Senzu. It applies
far more to Blitz, yes.
Yeah. Number 2 is Kerrigan, and I'm assuming this is who you have.
I have Sue. I do not.
Sui is an honorable mention. Kerrigan is eye test, and it might just be bias. But I
recency
just
bias,
think
that is. Yeah.
Recency bias perhaps as well, but like watching FaZe games has always been. I don't know. I've just always sort of been impressed by Kerrigan. He does have complete rounds where they then fumbled completely. Like, he does have rounds where they do just fumble it completely. But seeing stuff like what we saw in Shanghai, which from the calling side, I don't think that was unique to Shanghai over the year. I think we have seen that sort of the sort of tactical play that we've seen from Kerrigan. It's also like a lot of this I have to judge on like what I would consider my estimate of captaincy, which is more vibes. When you hear comms, when you see like what things look like, when you hear what people say in interviews, like when you hear this is what we have to judge IGLs and coaches on a lot of the time. And Kerrigan makes it there. It could have been Sui. Sui is an honorable mention for me because in large part because of vibes. Because you hear him in interviews and he's always probably the most confident guy in the entire esports scene, because he just goes like, before the game, like, how do you feel about this game? He just goes, we're gonna win, we're gonna stomp them, we're gonna crush them. And it's that sort of vibe, and it's always that's something I think is important. It's something I admire. But in hindsight, Sui probably could have made the list, but I just don't have too much of an opinion on Sui's tactical play this year, but I do want Kerrigan, so Kerrigan ends up here.
Yeah, so I have Stu just because over the course of the entire year, he's been able to put out a lot more, I think, just impressive Counter-Strike from a roster that has had its problematic individuals. In a big series, he's been able to outcall some of the other best IGLs. He's also had outright star fragging levels at certain events. Like that first Pro League they won, the fact that he's not MVP, kind of shocking. Yeah. Like he's an IGL who put up a 1.2 something rating. How the fuck has he not ended up with an MVP? I know that HLTV doesn't really give a fuck for rewarding IGLs. Like, that's why there's never been one except Glaive. That one year they glazed Astralis in the top 20. But This is a weird one for me because I think, yeah, Shuhei only getting an EVP or 1.2 rated fucking EPL win is crazy. It is actually crazy. Like that's there's a reason I called him the future. Like when I did my tier list of IGLs not too long ago, he is the prototype. Bragger, mid-rounder, confident leader, solid tactical mind for the game. Doesn't have to prove a particularly deep tactical like repertoire in MR12, and that might serve in his favor, but in that world as an IGL you need to then be able to shoot people. He does that at an incredibly high level. Like as far as IGLs go, he's one of the best fraggers. He deserves, I think, a lot of credit for the year. With a less, choky team, maybe, we've already had the conversation when it comes to desertion. They probably end up with a few event wins that are more significant than Pro League. But for now, yeah, he can't go number one because number one just kind of has to be Alexi B. Just the calling on this team has been fucking fantastic. We have to give credit, of course, to the coach of the year, probably, by a lot of people's estimation, for the structure, the way the team's been set up, the recruitment, the roles, all that stuff. But on the server, the calling has been first rate from Alexi. Sure, his firepower is wanting. Like, he doesn't even get traded that much. And it's a bit weird. Like, he's not actually even fulfilling the full profile of the prototypical, support IGL. But what matters is what he's been able to get from these pieces. It feels like this roster has 0 superstars and 4 star players because they each get their own fights in their own time. They're well set up for all of them. He manages to balance all of that on the server. I think, this has been an outstanding year from him. If he had elite caliber rifle play the entire year, elite AWP play for the entire year, he probably has an era. And he's probably going into the Hall of Fame for one of the best years of Counter-Strike ever played. Instead, we're here in the real world where they didn't quite manage to hit that peak, but Alexi B, phenomenal.
Where do you think Navi are in 2025? Do you think Navi are gone now?
They are a top 5 team.
You don't think they bounce back into being the number 1 team again?
No.
Interesting.
I do not. There's a reason we're going to have some conversations about Navi's actual level. Let's put it that way. But they going into next year, I don't have them that high. Sure, I still have them as at worst the 5th best team of the next season.
Yeah,
but it all depends on how the shuffles play out. I mean, they're gonna have to if they are really that good a team. You better win the first 3 events, or you better be at least in contention, because everyone else except Spirit seems to be making changes. You're gonna have a window there where everyone else isn't settled, and it's you and Spirit and maybe Mouse versus the world. You've got to show it in that moment. If in that moment you do what you did in the spring season of this year and go out pre-playoffs on 4 occasions, I was right. Let's just put it that way. I was very right.
No, I'm wondering if there could be an upturn. If there is an upturn in Navi, then Alexi B definitely enters Hall of Fame. I think just for the sheer amount of being able to recover from a downturn, because so many teams fail on that. I feel like so. I'm gonna, we'll see. I'm not sure it happens either, especially with how the shuffle's going. I think there's going to be a lot of very strong teams, but
but they'll be unsettled for a second. And when you're the team who have the best structure, you're the best caller, you should be able to pick teams apart.
Yeah, they might end up being what Vitality was this year, like eternal top 4 finishers.
Yeah, except in a very different way. But that makes sense.
Yeah.
You're right. Yeah, that's the IGLs. I think that's the most predictable, really, in terms of who's number 1. For me.
Yeah, it was never going to be anyone else.
It was never. But next up, we have another question. This one from Vince3991. It's another 2-parter, and we're okay doing that because it's the end of the year. We got time. Do you think that Mouse's training facility emulates a crowd help them practice choking better? Funny wording to the question, but I assume you mean practice not choking, because they certainly choked very well.
Yeah.
And I honestly, you come to the end of the year, you can't say it did. They had a couple they had a couple arena wins, literally a couple of arena wins. But for the most part, they utterly collapsed, from the first man down, but still. Because once you got to if you consider Torja, Yimfat, the closers of the team, you're okay, they still end up with fine numbers in big events, and Yimfat considering his role's always just like a 1.0 almost, you're like, okay, that's fairly impressive.
Yeah.
But yeah, the collapse started at the front, and I don't think it really helped them that much.
I actually have a pretty good answer for this because I don't think Mouse thought it would. I don't think that was the point of it. I think they built it because they were building a new facility, and it's
thought it'd
just
be
kind
cool.
of it's a cool thing to put in. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
a cool thing to put in. I think they have like a crowd area there. Like it's not just the stuff that everybody talked about, like having
Yeah, you can go to
pyrotechnics
the
and-
Mouse like place and see them play
Yeah.
if they're playing like an online game sometimes. Like that's a
Yeah,
thing.
I think they might just like their regular practice is probably done in that, and like they probably keep it open at some point. If they don't, they probably should. That would be cool. But I think Mouse never thought it would work against that. That's not the point of it. I don't think it ever would work because I think the issue with choking on a stage isn't like the sensory overload. I don't think it's not the fact that it's very loud. It's not the fact that there's pyrotechnics and explosions and whatever else. The issue is that there's a lot of people. There's just a fuck ton of people, and you can't emulate the feeling of being in front of a giant crowd if you know it's fake. Like you can't emulate that. That's an entirely different feeling. So I don't think it would move the needle. If they played in the Lanxess, like if they played in the Lanxess every game they played, or every practice game they played,
Yeah.
if they were practicing in the Lanxess in front of a full crowd, maybe. But you can't emulate that feeling because the issue is the people. It's not the it's not what you see. It's the feeling of being in front of such a huge crowd. I mean, look,
Yeah.
you can practice, you can do public speaking. Let's say this: if you ever have like a presentation at work or at school, which would make you more nervous? 300 people in a room or 30,000 people in a Zoom meeting? It's probably still the Zoom meeting because it's like even if they're not there, it's the people seeing you. It's the people and you seeing the people. It's
No,
like,
I disagree with you on that.
no, okay, but yeah, that's just kind of me. Like it's the
Like put someone on a podium in front of 50 people
yeah.
versus speak to 50 people over Zoom call. Even if it's 500 people, it's very different.
I think
The difference between streaming and being on stage is massive. Like I'm telling you that now. As someone who's done
that's
both,
definitely true. Yeah.
And one's very different to the other.
It is, but it is more like I think the nerves come from the people more so than. In this case, you're also in like your own home or in your own office, so that's a different feeling as well. But it's the feeling of being in front of a huge crowd, which is different. It's not the
and you only feel it when you see it, and that's the problem.
Yeah.
And that's why in the big stages, when they see a massive fucking sea of people, it's a very different. It becomes an event, like that raises inside of you.
Yeah, and
Something
you can't. If you see a massive sea of cardboard cutouts, that's not the same.
The COVID bubble, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, so the second part of the question is about Falcons roster building, and the problem is I think we've already answered this pretty well in videos, but also Falcons have seemingly just gone for it themselves. And yes, we do both believe that it is better to sign an existing core, take that ranking, and actually go play big events straight away.
Yeah, here's the thing. That is
a mismatch team.
That is the C option though, because what the A option actually is to keep Snappy, Sunpies, and Madden and drop them later. The C option is to sign the heroic core, which is what I've been saying for a month. But I've argued with some people who said that the B option is better. Get the 5 you want immediately, drop your Valve ranking, and grind your way back up. Because it isn't better. Like last year it would have been, because you could get invites based off of clout. But this year, in that case, you would be taking Magisk, Nico, and let's say Monacy +2. LAN adjusted
like Jimmy
players.
And someone else, like something that would have been.
Yeah, because in that case you end up in online play, and the two best players would be Jimmy and Magisk, because Nico, like we've seen G2 play CCT and stuff, and they lose. They lose in like random online games to tier 2 teams.
Yeah.
Because when you have tier 1 players who are adjusted to playing on LAN, and then they have to play random online cups to earn their ranking, that's when they fail. That's why I think that's honestly like when we see teams who've struggled to make it through big open qualifiers, like when we see NIP lose earlier than they should, or like when we had the older OG lineups who actually had some tier 1 talent, Fnatic and those teams, when they lose in open qualifiers, that's not because they're dog shit. It's probably it's just an entirely different environment, and like it's not what they're used to, and it's what their opponents are used to. Their opponents are just used to grinding it out in that. So it's more so So if they were to do that, if they were to build their perfect roster and then go into online, there's no way that's a guarantee of actually making it back. You're wasting the spring season and you risk missing the Austin Major. So that was never going to work in my opinion. So I can't say that's a good option. Keeping a core, I wouldn't have been hugely upset if they had kept Snappy Madness and Pius on, played like the Blast Bounty thing, and then been done with it. Sorry, but it would have been simple rather than St. Pius, otherwise they wouldn't. Oh, wait, sorry, no, it would have worked. I wouldn't have been hugely upset if they did that, played Blast Bounty and then cut them, but it's kind of you're missing out on the big shuffle season, so you risk ending up with Jambo and U-Jerks in that case, rather than now having the chance of signing Heroic. So the C option is to sign the Heroic core, and that was always going to be the best option for everybody involved except Heroic and Shush. So because Heroic, the thing with signing the core of a different team, it's obviously very challenging because the team you're signing from is a team which basically has to exit CS or at least significantly downgrade, step into tier 2 for a while with a boatload of money, which is not really useful because you have to rebuild a new roster and start playing online cups. So that's the issue. Like apparently FaZe and Mouse, they tried to get trios from FaZe and Mouse, and I understand that FaZe and Mouse had every single reason not to take a deal from Falcons. Even if Falcons offered them 10 million, I wouldn't sell Frozen, Rops, and Brokey to Falcons, because FaZe would have to exit CS. Like, there's no fucking way you could have kept the team in tier 1 for the spring season. And like for Mouse, the potential revenue you can generate off the back of that lineup is bigger than any buyout Falcons was realistically going to offer. So it's just it just never made sense. So, but Heroic are apparently in a position where they would be happy to have what I'm assuming is going to be $2 or $2.5 million instead of having a competitive CS team. So
yeah, we'll see what they end up doing. I wouldn't be surprised if we see a strange rebuild that we weren't really expecting. Like we always want them to go international. Like that's kind of what they've been for a while now, but they may go back to Denmark.
Yeah,
it's very up in the air. We'll see what comes of it. But let's move on to we're now into the top 15. And we have what I've considered the next best, because for me the Power 10 is where it really matters. But 15th to 10th, these are players who I've ordered, but every time I look at this, I reorder it.
Yeah.
To be real, like I struggle to commit to an actual order here, but I'll let you take it away, rather.
Yeah.
Who you got at 15?
This is one which was also mostly based on winning. So in hindsight, now that I'm actually saying it out loud, he probably should be significantly lower, but I do have Imme at 15th. And what my argument here was that he played at a very high level when Navi were really good. And him being as good as he was for that middle part of the year when Navi were really good was one of the reasons Navi were really good. That's why he managed to earn an MVP at IEM Rio. Deservedly so. That's why he was.
That's a big deservedly so.
I think it definitely was. I think it definitely was. If memory serves right. But yeah, another reason I thought he was good was because he didn't really fall off. He didn't really fall off against in arena games. He didn't really fall off in elimination. In terms of the average, he mostly maintained it. I'm sure if you looked at the nitty gritty more than I did, then probably he definitely fell off in a couple of key games. It's going to be between him, JL, or Bit, and Imme was better in the final.
Yeah, but he was actively working against them in the semi, and he's not outperformed them in the grand final to an extent where he deserves that MVP. I'm sorry, that just doesn't make sense to me.
Bit was nowhere in the quarter, and in the group stage, he was definitely the guy.
There's two options that I think were better, Bit and JL, just putting it that way. But that's whatever. I don't really care about the Rio MVP more than anything else. I just don't think he should be this high at all.
That's sort of why I'm reconsidering this now, because I've realized it's a Rio MVP, and I just really do not care about IEM Rio. I thought it was in hindsight, I think it made it one of the throwaway events of the year. It's just I don't care about it that much. So I would put him lower, but I said it on this list a couple of days ago. So Emma ends up being 15th. Who do you have as 15th?
So I have the very controversial, I'm sure, Nerds. Nerds at 15. Now, this is a team that literally struggle with stability. had to bring in new players, had to try and make things work. And he has been fragging as an elite rifler the entire time anyway. So for me, he kind of had to be up here. I mean, to be honest, the first time I made the list, he was like 11, and I was like, come on, it's a bit much. It's a bit much. He's not been that insane. He's not had that terrible of a team. He's not had to carry that hard. But he has been huge for them in big games, scattered throughout the year. He's had big event runs. He's just been elite in terms of his actual rifle play for the year. And that's why he ends up this high. He doesn't have the luxury of a lot of players to lean on a competent, efficient, easy to play with roster. And he's had to do a lot of things that I think made him very uncomfortable in terms of shifting his approach, having to be more vocal. And despite all that, again, still puts up some of the best fragging numbers for the year. And I think that just has to be rewarded. It's a tough sell for a lot of people who are like, but he didn't play 100 different fucking playoff games. Again, he played at an elite level. He didn't play kind of fine 100 times. And that's what mattered to me more than anything. He was a game winner over and over again for Heroic when they desperately needed one. Because look at this roster and the way it's played this year. Who is it? Tesses, Shush, Dexter. None of them could be relied upon to deliver round-winning impact, really.
Especially Dexter.
On a year-round basis, yeah, especially not Dexter. Who, whilst he had an uptick towards the end and things started looking
literally just
decent, it's just not enough. So, no, Nertz has been essentially in that one-man army sort of situation for a team that ends up being, like 7th best for the year?
Yeah.
It's him. He deserves that credit. If it's not him, it's Kixan. And considering I didn't put Kixan in my top 5 IGLs, I think it's fair to have Nertz in my 15th best player. I still don't think it's unreasonable to have him higher, but I think this is the best place to have him, just around 15.
Yeah, I'm going to carry on because I had Nertz in 14th. Pros, he's played excellent. He's made several playoff runs. Of course, Heroic often lose in those first playoff games, but hard to call it runs, but they made it there. Great stats, like on a purely statistical basis when we're talking about impact rating, ADR, all of those things. Negative, he drops off against top 10 opposition. He drops off quite heavily into 105. But he's still been here quite a lot, and he's had a lot of roster struggles. And with the context of how bad the team has been, with the honestly, even after Dexter joined, the sheer lack of an hopper. A lot of credit for Nertz. He's played with 3 different operas this year. I'm pretty sure because he played with Nikodos, and 1 point War 2K, and neither of them were particularly hot when he played with them. So, Nikodos,
the CS2 rifler was his AWP.
Yeah,
which is hilarious.
He was the original hybrid, except he was trash.
Yeah, I have my probably is it my most controversial pick? Potentially, probably not actually. I have a Liege at 14, and it's for similar reasons to Nertz, except amplify it all even more because he's been raw fragging wise even better. He's played with even worse players, and when you look at it at the end of the year, like god damn, this is literally one of the 5 best rifles in the world. He just has no real place to showcase it. And for me, that matters a lot. Like, I care about how good you are, irrespective of the actual awards. That's why Xantares for me was 16. Like, these are the best players in the world. They just don't really have the platform to showcase it consistently. What was so telling to me was Liege, when you looked at the fragging numbers HLTV decided to highlight. He's just consistently elite. And then ratings as well. Like 1.14 rating is the top 30, that's number 6. 1.11 rating is the top 10, that's number 5. Like, 1.12 rating at big events, number 13. Like, these are all in the right place. He just has no one with him to help him. That's why I said if he had even the playoff level help, like just to make playoffs, he would be in the top 5 players for the year. So for me, he has to go pretty high. 14 will be high for a lot of people. I'm sure there'll be some pushback on that, but I'm not bothered. He's just been that good. He has realistically been that good, and he deserves a lot of credit for it, considering how poor everyone else has been.
Yeah. We've already talked about Liege quite a lot, but that is
because you brought him up far earlier.
Very good pick. As my 13th, I have Jimmy, and I put him here because with the context of the positions that he plays, I think he does deserve to be this high. I think he's the best anchor in the world for the year. I think he has sort of excelled in that position. What sort of takes him down a peg is that and not as much as Sershin, not nearly as much as Sershin, he does kind of drop off in the big games. And like he drops off in the arenas, he drops off in those sort of contexts, but he's still been there. And with the context of being an anchor, having that many standout events, I think is just excellent. So that's why he ends up here.
For me, he finished 17 to 20th, like roughly. And there's the reason for this, the reason he's not actually gone higher is because I wanted him to be able to showcase all that good stuff at a far higher level because he gave the roster so much stability. Like realistically, if you think about who has this consistent a player no matter what, very few teams do. The problem is he's never going out and winning rounds. And when I observed, like when I thought about my philosophy for actually what matters in Counter-Strike, I'm still more interested in players who win rounds than those who don't lose them. And more often than not, Yimfat on Mouse has been not losing them. And that's kind of a problem for me. Now, some people are going to hate who I have at 13 instead. And I hated myself for having to put him this high. But I got Spinks.
Oh.
And I don't want him this high. Because, like, the overall numbers for the year look solid. And you think about who should be a star player in this world. You're like, Spinks, he's got to be up there. But in big games, so often, he was so weak. He disappeared, really. And that was just violently upsetting to me. Like, that's why when I first initially put him at 15, I was like, oh god, he's 15 already. Then I had to keep thinking, keep evaluating, looking at number of big series played and number of big series he played, and he played well. And I'm like, god fucking damn it. If Spinks was this level consistently throughout the year, this team is an era-defining roster. Instead, because he has so many drop-offs, they're not. But he has to be 13. He's 0.69 KPR in prestige playoffs, and I'm like, it's technically it's a rounding error lower than FlameZ's, but the reality of what we see and the positions he plays keep him from being any higher. 11th best in prestige playoff ratings of the KPR of the players I tracked. Impressive. And that's why he can't go as low as I initially wanted to put him. Because I did not have him in the top 15. But I got to the list and I was like, there's no place for him in the honorable mentions. I only have 14 players. It's just true. He has to be there.
Yeah, I have him 12th, which also is higher than I wanted to put him. But it's he has the stats to be top 10, but then he completely disappears in key games, and I can't. No,
it's
can't
painful, isn't it? It's painful.
Yeah, I can't really add anything. I hope he finds some better form in a different team wherever he ends up going. But that's where I have him. As my 11th pick, I have Frozen.
Hold on, actually skipped my 12th.
Oh, sorry. Oh, yeah. Fuck. Go ahead.
Yeah, my 12th is Torji. I have Torji at 12. I've loved what he's done on this team. Over the course of these big events, he's actually been solid every single damn time, despite everything the team's done wrong and the team has failed to do. He's had a lot of strong runs, a lot of consistency. I mean, CT side, he's been one of the most dynamic and creative players of the year. Watching his POVs on CT side has been, honestly, just fun. Just fun. He does so much, like, cool stuff in terms of new aggressions, little set pieces to get himself picks. He's been able to have constant influence over the CT side of games just because of that. But on the T side, so much of his round is trying to set up players who then just don't hit shots and then having to bail everything out and try to make something work. And he's not Munacy. And that's the biggest reproach I have for him on the T side. He can't clutch like Munacy. He also doesn't have the reliable openings that Munacy does in front of him. And that's what's limited his rating overall. But the KPR's been strong no matter what. And I think, for me, that's always been one of the most important stats, just killing people. And he does it super well. I can't have him higher because he doesn't have enough, like, iconic series. There's no iconic Torji series, really. There's a few iconic maps, and in every series, there's at least 2 iconic CT sides, almost. Like, you'll know he'll pop off and do some crazy shit. Like, I guess his best series is, like, Furia or Rio, like, where he just absolutely dicks them on Nuke, and then just converts the second map. But the Nuke performance was, worthy of mention. But realistically, they played a team who were fraudulently in playoffs and utterly collapsed. So, all in all, lacks a few iconic runs for me, but damn, really good year.
Did you? Because I had this feeling that you didn't really see this from Torji during the year. This was more something which emerged when we look back. Because I didn't feel like Torchi was that good during
Well, that's what I'm
the
saying.
year.
Like, if he had iconic series, you would have had that thought.
Yeah.
But instead, he's just in these big games where the team has been dire a lot of the time. He's fragged out, like, to
Yeah.
his standard level. And then when they've won events, he's still just there, like, doing his thing. It's just the MVP will go to someone else, or Zaiwu in the case of the Pro League they won.
Yeah.
But there's something to be said for, despite all the odds, despite all the failings, despite who they come up against, Torji still finds the kills.
Yeah. I'm just going to put in a quick side note here before I continue, because there's some news breaking out. It seems the Falcons transfer is done, because Overdrive just tweeted and then removed the team names. Heroic earned close to $10 million from transfers to Liquid and Falcons.
10 million?
Yeah, but that also includes Cadian to Liquid, so maybe 9 million for the core.
Yeah, I mean, Nerds, if I'm assuming Nerds to Liquid is also a part of this.
Oh, right, yeah.
So they probably what? That's probably, Jesus Christ, like minimum $8.5 million.
There's no way Liquid have bought Cadian and Nerds for over $1.5 million.
Yeah, there's no way. So it's at least 8.5 they've gotten for that.
That could be wrong, because he did delete that and then just said they earned almost $10 million in transfers total, which I'm thinking that number might include the 2 million from Stown and Yabi, even if that was technically last year.
That might be a detail. Yeah.
Even if it's 5 million for the core, that's quite high, I think.
That's insane. Sango, give me your entire roster. Like, just buy out an entire team at this point. Like,
that means somebody paid, like, if we put it even on each player, somebody paid about 1.7 million for Tessus or Degster in 2024.
We said Falcons were going to break the game in some way in terms of the amount they were willing to pay, and that's mind-boggling. Okay.
There's another news item which I'm going to leave for one of the Q&A questions we have, but it's actually quite big as well. As for my number 11, I have Frozen. I already said.
You already said, and I'm already crying.
It's already kind of for similar reasons as Spinks. I think he definitely could have been lower with.
Yep.
Especially with like how he kind of disappeared entirely in Shanghai. But his spring season was really good, and he was there for the events where phase were good. He was one of those guys next to Brokey. He was there, but it's a very empty rating, and it's very like he's got the ADR, but he has really just TPR merchant, not a lot of KPR at all. He's solid on both sides. He kind of disappears in arena games, kind of disappears against top 10 opposition. Still made quite a few runs, and Frozen was more up there than I think Rops was more often. And it's marginal, but like if for 80% of the year, Rops was a 1.0 something and Frozen was a 1.10 something at those same events. They didn't do much better from it, and Frozen's rating is a bit inflated, but I still kind of had to. Yeah, as a baseline, I think I have to put Frozen above. He could definitely go lower as well, but that's where I
think your judgment of Frozen here is incredibly generous, because half the events this year he's sub 0.7 KPR. Half the events of the year he's sub 0.7 KPR. Like, this is a guy who has everything given to him on this team. Like, in terms of opportunity to go win games, win rounds, make kills happen, and he doesn't do it. So I can't have him this high at all. I'm kind of outraged. This is, talking about empty calories. Rating loves Frozen, and that's one of the reasons Rating is just wrong, because he's just not been that good this year. He's got one like impressive rating at an event for a star rifler, and that's Pro League. I mean, it's Chengdu where they've won. Like, he's 0.78 KPR. Like, he's had a good event, but he's not blown us away. And that's why in this spot I have Brokey, who has actually had proper peaks. Like, still has, for me, he's limited by his by the number of events where he is sub 0.7. You know what I mean? Like, there's a reason both these guys I have below Rops, because Rops actually kills more people than these two, which is shocking to say. Over the course of the year, he has more events where he kills people, but he just does. Brokey does get the credit, though, for Chengdu run, last full finals run. Their second place at the Copenhagen Major. He gets credit for a lot of those big event performances where he was outstanding and impactful. And, didn't just source the numbers. It was actually impressive Counter-Strike to watch. So I do think Brokey deserves that spot well above. I mean, I don't know if you're Brokey ahead of this guy. If you do, we're getting into a different conversation. But because Because for me, Brokey has had enough poor events that holds him back. Like he's been up and down, realistically, and the downs have been problematic. And it's why all of the FaZe players having downs has been why they haven't been able to really push on beyond 6th sort of ranking in the world for this year, ever since Chengdu onwards. Pretty much, like they've just been just stagnant. But no, I have Brokey up here. Brokey has been far more calorie dense. Like he's been far more fruitful in his fragging. And so I have to have him here.
Yeah.
For an AWPer, historically we don't think of AWPers as being 1.1 rated players. Like we usually expect that to be like pretty unimpressive. I do think the AWP struggles have to be factored in when we consider the AWPers this year. Like the fact that AWPing has been difficult. That wide swinging is just the way to play CS2. And that for AWPers, that is an actual issue to deal with. But, he has been present enough for me to give him this credit. Let's put it that way. Who's your 11? That was 11. Sorry, who's your 10? Because at 10, I have Rops, and we've already had a lot of conversations about him, so I don't need to go too much more into it. But who did you have at 10 then?
At 10... Actually, are we doing 10 now, or are we doing 10 later?
Oh, let's save 10. Let's save 10. Fuck it.
Let's save 10, yeah.
Because I have Rops, but that's just a spoiler.
I figure, so then we have 5, and then we have 5. I mean, or should we do 4 and then 5?
No. Let's do it properly. Let's stop at 11, then we'll do 10 to 5, and then 10 to 6, then 5 to 1. Just realised all of my things overlap here. In terms of the way I've noted them down. But all right, next, we got a question from Fatkwalla8646. Prospects who flopped or disappointed this year?
I have a great answer.
I have one personally, because I'm only going to really talk about prospects I've done videos on. I don't care about anything else here. For me, the big one that's been just disappointing for me overall, and he has been for a little while now. He's been on he's been on a decline. But I think if he gets his shit together, he still has a real chance of being a key player in his scene, and that's Neofrag. And most of the stuff that's let him down, sure, has been his play on the server hasn't been good enough, but also his attitude, like his personality in teams has been problematic. There's no two ways about it. I think he's to take himself more seriously, take the game more seriously, and he could be, again, in conversations for those top check spots, back on a team like Sinners, back to playing, 4 real events. Instead, he's on Unity, just replaced Mikey, essentially. I mean, they're fine roster, but they're nowhere near the top of the Czechoslovak scene, which is where I think he should be. And if he's not there, he should be playing in international play at a higher level, because the level he showed in Sinners was worthy of that sort of international move. He just never really converted on the opportunity, and has since then been a bit of an issue for rosters. Honestly, I could say the same thing about Boros.
Boros is going to be my pick.
Yeah, because individually he played so well at Katowice. You think that could have made the Falcons project not necessarily elite, but viable compared to what they were throughout the year. But again, off the server shit is what let us down here. And it's so dumb, because just take this as a job, take it seriously, and more importantly, take yourself seriously, because come on, Boros, some of the stuff we hear about isn't very flattering. Just professionalize a bit, take yourself seriously, and these two have probably real careers in the future.
Yeah. Boros definitely had a chance at recovering when he went into the breach. That is a real opportunity to reestablish himself. And at this point, I think Boros might just be out. I think, because what we heard was that he squandered that as well. That he didn't show up. He literally didn't show up to games. He literally didn't go. And that's bullshit. That's fucking that's just stupid. I wonder if maybe he gave up after having the fucking shot and having it taken away. I wonder if maybe he gave up entirely and just thought, fuck it. But I think he might just be gone. I don't see Boros, he got the chance at ITB and it absolutely fucked up. I don't see Boros getting another chance at somewhere like Endpoint. I don't really see that happening. I don't see Boros getting another chance even I think he might need to do some real gymnastics to get himself into one of those teams. So yeah, last time we saw him, it was in a Middle Eastern Cup. So I think Boros might just be entirely gone, and I think it's a shame. He was honestly could have been a tier 1 player even last year because I think he had, after the Paris Major, I think he had the chance to move to a team which could have been so much better than Falcons in the summer transfer. I don't know exactly where it would have been, but he was good enough to do that. And if he could have had a good fall season, we could have been talking about Boris as a tier 1 player in 2024. We didn't end up doing that.
Yep.
And he had a good shot at Falcons. Katowice playoffs is impressive. I think if Falcons were a bit more patient with him, maybe things could have turned around. But it also does seem that Zonic saw something which was just never going to work, and that was the cut.
I mean, if he just played the way he played in Katowice as a Falcons player, we're talking about him in the top 15 this year. We're talking, he's elite fragging numbers, high impact in terms of actually on the game. If you watch them, he'd have been a devastating force, and probably carrying a lot of these underpowered Falcons rosters in terms of their multi-kill ability and all that good stuff. But yeah, big waste.
Yep.
All right. Up next is a topic which has triggered me, annoyed the fuck out of me, as I've seen a lot of people just offhandedly dismiss this conversation as over, sorted, settled. A lot like they did certain other roles, which I think were also wrong, but especially this one annoyed me. Team of the Year. Now, Quacke, I don't know who you've chosen, technically.
I think you need to lead, because I kind of need to hear some arguments.
But right, okay, let me do this, because I have been constantly told that the Team of the Year is, without hesitation, without conversation, without debate or negotiation, Na'Vi. And I feel like a lot of this stems from fall season delusion. Because it seems a lot of people have forgotten the spring season happened and write it off as just, they won the major, nothing else matters, and then in the fall season they made 6 finals. And that by itself makes them the best team of the year. When realistically, they have won one prestige event, a Pro League, the Esports World Cup, and IEM Rio. That's not a historically, year-defining list of results. They made the final at Cologne, and then the finals of Fall and Spring finals. There's then a gulf of not hitting playoffs, and I don't count Pro League 9 to 12th game as a playoff game. No. That's just a group stage extender. They missed playoffs at the Blast World Final, Katowice, Shanghai Major, Dallas, and that Pro League, the other Pro League. They have been thoroughly underwhelming if they're your team of the year at far too many events. Far too many. Whereas, whilst you may argue, Team Spirit didn't make anywhere near as many finals, they won 3 big events, 2 of which were prestigious, not just Pro League, not just IEM Rio, not just EWC, and then also won the Blast Spring finals. I've seen some people this conversation started with HLTV and Maui talking about Blast events being worth slightly more than others. And I get why they've made this case in terms of the teams in attendance typically, but I only think it should apply to the Blast World Final, not Spring and Fall Final. For me, they don't hold any bigger weight by themselves. But the Blast World Final is the one that should be considered special out of those groups, but they still don't touch Prestige.
No, they don't touch Prestige, but they're definitely a step above Dallas and Rio kind of events.
A
Definitely.
lot of people have that opinion now, and
I'm
okay with you having it, and just
I just think
it's strongly.
It's often a bigger crowd, and we do often have several top 5 teams attending, even the spring and fall finals.
It's usually at least 5 of 6.
Yeah, and it's narrow enough. Being 8 teams instead of 16 as an IEM event is, you often have actual top 5 clashes in the group stage already. So it's very much a bit more of a gauntlet compared to IEM events where you can. One upset suddenly sets you up as a run where you make playoffs of beating 9Z. So it's a
and so you've got them with the fact that they have those real wins. They have a final at the Blast World Final, top 4 in Dallas, and they miss playoffs in Cologne. That's the one big, massive disappointment for the year, is that they miss playoffs in Cologne. That's only one massive disappointment at big events, not 5. I don't see how Na'Vi can be considered the team to beat for the year, the best team for the entire year, when they have been notoriously beatable in group stages, not even making playoffs. How is that the best team of the year? I don't see how it's not a conversation, especially considering their elite event, prestigious event performances have left them wanting. They have not taken a hold of this year in the way the team of the year should have. And someone else has won 2 of the 4 big events, like truly big events, on their watch, allegedly. I don't think this should count as a defined team of the year. I honestly have them at this point as tied. Like, I cannot see them as separated. I think they have to be tied for team of the year, just as a punishment for Na'Vi fans. Like, you cannot be team of the year and fuck everything up that often.
No, I think you might be onto something else, which is that Spirit win. I think
if you consider Spirit team of the year, I'm happy for you. If you consider Na'Vi team of the year,
think so.
I'm fine with it as well, as long as you don't pretend that it's clear and obvious and guaranteed. Look at how dominant they were, because they just weren't.
The argument for Na'Vi is that they didn't in a streak. Like, they had a good streak, while Spirit were a bit more up and down. But that is also partially because they didn't have invites in the spring season. Like, they had Katowice, they did a great performance, and then Copenhagen they stumbled. They stumbled in the quarterfinal. I still think if they don't have the issues with sickness as much as some consider it an excuse, if they don't have that, I think they win. I just think they win the major outright. And then they had to skip EPL, they had to skip Chengdu. They go into Dallas and they stumble again. And then they go into spring final and they win. Then they go into the fall season. They stumble at Cologne. They stumble at Esports World Cup. What Na'Vi has to their credit is that they had a streak of 6 grand finals. But it's also, aside from Cologne, none of them really matter all that much. Because the spring final is end of season, and like we had a bunch of teams missing, I believe. Like we had a bunch of teams who we knew had summer transfers going on, or we had a bunch of teams we knew had sort of checked out already. So it was a bit meh in terms of that spring final, grand final from Na'Vi. Esports World Cup. It's honestly, literally just the format. It is just the format that fucks it up for me. Because if they had a proper format with 16 teams and the top 10, top 5 teams they had in attendance, that's a very legit event. I don't really care. Because they definitely had the teams to make it a good event, but it's the format that fucks it up. Because they won a single best of 3 and then they were in playoffs. And that is just so fucking weird.
Yeah, I mean, I don't discount EWC in the same way, just because they do then have to play 3 playoff games to win it, and that's real in that sense, because they do play real teams to win the actual event. But for me, the problem is just it's not a selling point. They made 6 finals. If you told me they won 6 straight events, we can have a conversation. We can realistically talk about them having an era at that point. Sure, they still need a major to really round it off, but they'd had one before it. It kind of made sense. This isn't selling it. This just isn't selling it to me.
No, how many grand finals did FaZe make? They made a bunch in a row as well in 2023, I think. Or maybe it was 2023 going into 24. Yeah, it was. They made Sydney, fall final, world final, and then going into 24, they made Katowice, Copenhagen, and Chengdu. So they made 6 grand finals as well. I think we had FaZe as an honorable mention for last year's team of the year, and if they had sustained that for the full year, if they had 6 finals in the year, I probably would have put them in honorable mention. I'm going to say it's Spirit who are team of the year. They won the biggest events. They won. And yeah, like you said, if Na'Vi had actually won a bunch of them, it definitely would have mattered.
Win Cologne, and this isn't that much of a conversation.
Win Cologne and
really
Na'Vi
isn't that much of a conversation. It's even if they end up
settled. Even if the streak is the same, even if they still end up winning 3 out of those 6 events, if they lose another one of them, as long as Cologne is a win, I would probably still pick Na'Vi, because then they have a major in Cologne and Spirit have a major in Katowice. It's 50-50, and then Na'Vi have a much better streak, and Spirit fumbled a bunch of the year. I think it looks even more clear-cut for Spirit, even if Spirit actually played the full year, but they had a bit of a fucky-wucky spring season, and I don't know if it's because of sponsor commitments. They felt they had to play Bet-Boom events, but
it's their main jersey sponsor, so I assume there was some sort of incentive to do that.
Yeah, so if they had played the same events as Na'Vi did and won an equal amount, I probably would have said it was even more clear cut for Spirit. They probably would have won an event or two more if they had actually played the full calendar. So yeah, it's Spirit for me. It's going to be Spirit, especially with the arguments you've made. Because I wasn't sure first, but really Navi aren't that impressive. I didn't think so. Even when they had 6 straight finals, I remember we talking about this. Somebody asked in a Q&A if we thought Navi had an era, and I said even if they end up winning 10 straight events now, I wouldn't consider this run of 6. I wouldn't consider that part of the era. I would consider that the run up. I would consider that the 2017 Astralis Major win to Astralis era. Like that's not part of it. That's just like the build up. That's the build up to it.
Yeah.
So yeah,
especially seeing as after they win that major, by the way, they do then miss playoffs twice, like in a row. It's ridiculous. You can't really see them as a dominant force throughout the year with those sorts of cock-ups thrown in the mix.
No. But yeah, honorable mentions Vitality and G2, of course. Vitality, who were solid finishers, but if they'd won a bit more, they had a chance. And G2, who I think would have been Team of the Year if they had a good IGL. Because it is the snacks of it all. They built the best team on paper, except for the caller. Like, that's what they have in 2024. Yeah. So, yeah.
Right, up next, we have a question from Potato Payton 1948. If you add someone to C9 to replace Inters, who would it be? Brackets, no perfecto.
I am going to hijack this question because the news that broke out that I was going to say for a later question is that Overdrive is saying Cloud9 are disbanding. Entirely.
Oh, shit. G2 are closing in on Heavy God, apparently.
Yeah, G2 Heavy God and Cloud9 are set to no longer exist, apparently. It literally happened like 10 minutes ago. What I was going to hijack this question for is to say that I think that makes a fuck ton of sense. There's no fucking reason for Cloud9 to keep a Russian team in 2024 when they don't have the Gambit core nor Electronic and Perfecto. Because it made sense when you signed the Gambit core. Like, yeah, you got it relatively cheaply in 2022. They were a top 5 team in the world at that point, or it definitely had been in the past. That's a solid purchase when you purchase that roster. Didn't really work out. Also makes sense to keep it when you have a chance to buy Electronic and Perfecto relatively cheaply. Makes sense. Nice job. But then whatever. Like, as soon as you lose Electronic and Perfecto, you're just stuck with a Russian-speaking roster and all the negative press that's going to bring you as a North American org, which is doing nothing. And you're going to have to buy even more Russian players from Russian oligarchs to make it actually worthwhile having this team. And at that point, it just, I don't see it making business sense for Cloud9. So yeah, absolutely exit and come back in a couple of years if you want to. They're successful enough in other esports where you don't need a CS team. Or maybe do the TSM route and try to build like a North American roster which can rival complexity or whatever. Which is going to take a while and it's going to be a bigger undertaking, but it's significantly cheaper, better PR. You know, if you can bring back Floppy, that's a lot of people are going to like that. So that's what I think Cloud9 should do. Here's another one which literally just came from Harumi. So grain of salt, but
it's a Harumi.
Bet Boom probably getting Boomage and Axile. That's nice. So you're going to have to rewrite your video.
That entire video is fucking dumpster. Like 45-minute recording, lots of editing involved. All of it's fucked. Because the Russian scene got really turned up on its head. Like, I knew it was getting turned on its head, but then since I made that recording, Norbert got cut, and then this all started happening. Like, I'm screwed. Like, I'm actually screwed.
Yeah.
I can't release that video. Just going to delete it now. Fuck it.
All of the VP players are going to Paravision with Dastan. BetBoom are apparently signing. Like we said, they had the money to like take people from above, and they're doing exactly that from Cloud9, apparently.
Bloody
supposedly. And then Nine Pandas are probably getting good players as well. Yeah, if we're talking about the A roster, which did exist, I
weird hypothetical world.
Yeah, I probably would have picked Siren because I think he's solid and he's available.
I don't think he's. Is he available since when?
No, sorry, he's still on BetBoom. Maybe Norbert then.
Yeah, I probably wouldn't have put him there. Norbert's not a bad shout. I kind of like if you want to go pick a role player from way below. Lear might have been an option from Namiga, because a lot of people really rate what he does, and I'm okay with it, and I'm gonna allow everyone else's hype to be legit for once, rather than stomping on everything. Next up, talk about Coach of the Year. We're going to keep this one brief because I don't think it's that interesting of a discussion.
Yeah.
But look, I have a couple nominees. I mean, I have two guys I want to just mention, just shout out wise. Obviously, I have Mara. I think it's almost he's actually got a legit case for Coach of the Year, just overall because of what he's achieved. But he can't quite match what the number one has achieved. But what he did in terms of recruitment, understanding what his team needs, developing a team throughout the year. They've used multiple systems and they've adapted as their players have changed. Something a lot of teams struggle to do. And so it's been a very impressive year for Mara. He was my other true nomination. The other one was more an honorable mention because I'm like, HLTV didn't nominate him. And that's Ash. Like, what the fuck y'all doing? Why is Taz getting nominated?
Yeah.
Why is he getting anything? And someone like Ash isn't, who's actually led a team like this from nothing back up to the top. And I do find it hilarious. People are like, oh, when Snacks was IGLing Gamer Legion, they kind of made it work with inferior talent. You think that's Snacks? Fucking Egypts. Yeah. No. He's old reliable at this point. Give him any 5 fucking players somehow. Ash makes it further than he ever should. It's ridiculous.
It might actually be the inverse. You're not giving him any 5 fucking players. He is picking the exact 5 fucking players nobody else is even looking at and making it work.
There's that aspect too, yeah.
Yeah, there's that aspect. So, yeah, I had Ash and Mara as honorable mentions. For Mara, it's honestly more, it's maybe slightly wider than just 2024, but it's slightly. more so that 2024 is the culmination of what he's been doing for 3 years, to borrow an opinion from Overtime on Inferno, TLDR's podcast. Just gradually making improvements to this team until they culminate in major playoffs. That's really impressive. Honestly, Blitz, Mara, and Techno might be the only 3 constants since this lineup was IHC and was starting to make Katowice play-ins and stuff. So
they are literally the 3 constants.
Yeah. And yeah, we've given credit to Blitz. Techno deserves some credit, but Mara as well, as probably the guy, controlling everything. So yeah, good job.
Techno's just interesting because he kind of, in some ways, mirrors Magic's on Spirit. There's like a young guy who's just like a headshot machine, kind of talented, transitions with the team throughout a number of different signings, adaptations of their style, but always stays present. And he's managed to be, still a productive fragger at the end of it, which Magic's struggled with in a lot of iterations of the roster. So he's just been a support player for a lot of it, but major final notwithstanding.
Yeah, I had Ash as an honorable mention. Very analytical. It's very there's a reason he was the guy interviewed for the article Nero put out about when is esports going to have its big data shift like we've seen in other sports, and there's a reason for that. He is doing stuff in a novel way. He's doing it very successfully, and you could probably chuck this guy in a tier 1 team and he would bring you quite a bit of success. But I'm also happy if he can keep playing his trade in Gamer Legion, that's also very good for them, I think. Another honorable mention I had, which was actually Barry, which is a bit of an outsider, but it is mostly for a brief. Yeah. It's mostly an outside, more of a, not even a fluky peak, because I think they definitely earned it, but it's quite impressive coming in as a Danish coach into a Portuguese-speaking team with 0 players who have any right to be in Cologne playoffs, and make that work. And they played great. Aros Dutch is played excellent for the year, I think, and I think U-Jerks has shown decent stuff. Story has shown decent stuff. Even Muters and Roman weren't complete. They held their own, but then it's in large part thanks to Barry, I think, that we've seen a gradual and pretty steady improvement in Saw over time. Yeah. And the only reason why I think Saw, based on what rumors you hear, he either got Alud, where the players controlled the team and the players had some fallout and they convinced the org to kick somebody else, or it was just the org which is being stupid, because there seems to have been some drama there behind the scenes, which I hope we get to see in some article at some point. Final honorable mention, Hallie, which is mostly just the same sort of thing as Chopper, successfully building a system around what might be the most talented player of all time, to make it work. And who is your pick for Coach of the Year?
It has to be Blade. The way the system has worked for them this year, integrated pieces that have been disappointing, and slowly worked them into shape over the course of 2 seasons, has been impressive. You can't rely on any individual on this team to really dominate a series. That's just not a thing. Sure, like you'll have iconic bit Inferno maps. You'll have some. Well, JL can carry you to a major randomly, but only across certain maps. Like he's not doing it 3 maps. It's the 2 maps they win. He plays super well. But at that event, that's one event of a dozen. And generally, from what is a very underwhelming team in terms of legit fraggers, I mean, there's one who's got potential for it in Bit, one who should be a good third piece on the team in JL, and 2 guys have just been disappointing in Immo and Wonderful. Like they've taken that and just created an identity, a super tactical identity, gets a variety of different looks for the different players that suit their styles, in order to make them, greater than what they actually are in terms of the sum of their skill set. He very specifically narrows down the game for them to allow them to show that off. So I think a very impressive system, a very impressive year for him. And yeah, he has to be coach of the year because honestly, the other coaches you can't really give them as much tangible credit in terms of playing winning Counter-Strike. Like he's been that guy with very inferior players making borderline team of the year.
Yep, I'm his number 1 as well. And for me, it's also Blade might enter the conversation for being the best coach of all time because he's now managed to build the best team in the world twice in 2 different languages with only 1 player in common between them. Not being the IGL. That's impressive.
Yeah, that takes some doing.
Yeah, that takes some fucking doing. So yeah, it's one thing he was doing it Russian speaking with simple electronic bit, Boomage and Perfecto. Great, good job. Won a major. Let's fucking go. It falls apart. He has to get Alexi B and a bunch of other international players. Some of them not even that great. I remember the Navi roster wasn't looking too hot after that shuffle ended. Like, yeah, they picked up JL and Emma, but like they passed on some pretty damn good tier 1 players. It took a year, but then they became the best team in the world. So like, yeah, it's a damn good job. He might have beaten out Zonic for me in terms of being the best coach of all time at this point.
No, that's a conversation.
That's a conversation.
I mean, because realistically, when you look at it, you think about like essentially the Zonic discussion is mirrored by the Carrigan Glaive discussion. Like, oh, how good is he really? Because he can't do it with multiple teams. As soon as things start to look a bit iffy, all of a sudden he's no longer the best player in the world, best team in the world. Sorry.
Well, Zonic, to be fair, Zonic also has the same thing with Blade. He's done it in 2 different languages with 2 different Ingib leaders with only 2 players in common between the 2 teams. He's done it with Astralis and Vitality.
That's where it sort of starts to make a difference. But
yeah,
look, the absolute failure to adjust in Falcons and realistically just working against his IGL almost at times.
Yeah, I'd still give it to Blade because I think he would have had Zonic beats him in longevity, of course, and I think Blade would have had the same longevity if it wasn't for world events. It definitely could have. So I'm gonna give it to Blade because I think because of factors outside of his control. So yeah, but that's not what we're here for. He's the coach of the year for sure. Anyway.
Yeah. Talking about GOAT coach will be another discussion.
Yeah.
Can I pause recording? Because bloody hell, I need to grab another glass of water. We're 2 hours in.
Go right ahead. I need some food. I'm hungry as fuck. Just like a snack or something.
Yeah, but I'm talking about for us in the show. Like, we're still live.
Oh, nice.
I'm wondering if I can pause recording or something so we can go do that. But I don't think there's a way. I'll have to just make... I think we either power through or we do an awkward short second part. I think we power through.
Let's power through.
Let's power through. Right.
I have chocolate here, so I'm going to munch on some of it.
I'm not hungry. My voice is starting to die. Got a question from MF Vondas. Who are your top 5... Oh, sorry. What are your top 5 rappers? Because rappers aren't people. I will be judging you based on your picks. I have a complete 5 with an honorable mention. I don't have them in order because I don't see the point. Quack, do you have a list?
No, I haven't prepped one. I can name a couple.
I know who yours. I know who yours going to be. I know at least.
Yeah, I mean, Logic is there.
Knew it.
And Tyler the Creator is there. And then I'd probably have to put. I probably would have to put Eminem somewhere in there because I have enjoyed Eminem quite a damn bit over the years. There's some Swedes. I don't know if I can call them. It's a group. And they're kind of rappy, but not like... I mean, no, they are probably a hip-hop group. I'm going to go for Tjuvjakt. They're Swedish. They have a nice
Yeah,
vibe. They're
whoever they
coming.
are, yeah.
I'm gonna see them in the summer. They're coming here. Nice. And then as a fifth, I'm just for fun. I might pick. It's probably between Childish Gambino or Watsky. I just think Watsky has a nice vibe.
Oh, Childish. We don't have to talk about this year.
No, he doesn't make the top 5. He has a nice vibe, but Watsky has a better style, I think.
We should also don't have to talk about this year. That album doesn't have to exist. It's fine. All
Hmm.
right, so me, it's pretty simple, pretty mainstream, but just pretty goated. For my 5 is Kendrick, Kanye, Tyler, MF Doom, and Nas, with a big shout out to Big Crit, because one of his albums has played on repeat pretty much the first 4 months of this year in my head, like just non-stop listening to that one of his albums. But yeah, for me, it's classic. Like, these are the artists who've had, you know, just album after album that I've been able to just stick on and just listen to ad nauseum. Just the creativity, the lyrics, everything else that goes into making a great song that's nebulous. Like, these are just the guys I've enjoyed the most. Like, and when I was a kid, like, yeah, I used to listen to Eminem. I used to listen to, honestly, mostly a lot of cringe shit. But Eminem was a guy who, like, when I go back to it and listen to him, like, there's so much skit nonsense, and like, in terms of what he does, like, it's silly and it's fun, but like, the serious song list is just too short. The serious album list even shorter.
Yeah, I just realized there's somebody I have to cut, and I'm probably cutting Eminem. It's going to be Joey Valence and Bray, but that's maybe a bit recency bias, but I love.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
I do love them. That's great. I don't listen. I'm not like hugely into rappers as people, so to speak. Like, I'm not. I have other artists which but I have other artists where I'm like, oh, I love listening to them. They have a great style. With rappers, it's more like, this is a great song, and yeah. But Logic is probably the only one where I properly put him like, I love all of his stuff because it's his stuff more so than I love his stuff because it's great. The others are more like, I have maybe a few dozen songs which I like.
Yeah, no, me, I've always been an albums guy. You know, I used to buy a lot of CDs and then just listen to the album start to finish, and I still do that now. A new album comes out, I put it on start to finish. Like, it always has to be. I don't care about singles. I don't care about music videos. I don't care about any other bullshit. I don't have an extensive list of liked songs from random artists. Like, if you're an artist who has a good song, you better have a good fucking album, or I'm never listening to that song again. Yeah, that's pretty much how it works for me. I need a good. I'm an album guy, and so yeah, I think my list kind of reflects that. I mean, the exception maybe being MF Doom, who has like a very limited catalog, but just the catalog peaks so fucking high that he just hits that sort of. It's all the right notes for me.
Yeah,
but all right, that's the Q&A question. There's still one more left, but it's from you, so kind of funny. We'll get to that eventually. Next, we're entering the Power 10. Finally, the real big teams of the year, players of the year. Sorry. This is where things get very, very interesting, and I think honestly, this when the players get fucking elite. I'll start with my 10 pick because it's already been spoiled. It's Rops. I'm not going to lie. Start and middle of the year, forgettable. In terms of impactful like events, in terms of his rating, in terms of everything, it's just start middle of the year, not great. What's hilarious though is that even in those events, you know, even all that disappointment, he's still at 0.7 KPR. He's just not ending up at a pretty rating like Frozen does. Frozen sub 0.7 KPR still ends up with better numbers because of rating. Like, that's just pretty much what it is. So I think statistically he's been massively underrated this season. Over the course of the year, though, he also has some great runs in terms of peaks. He also has the best peak of any phase player by a long shot in the Perfect World Shanghai Major. Realistically, that was one of the most insane things I've seen from any player. Watching his POV, you realize he's hitting shots that are wrist-breaking, and that it's not that he can't do it year-round. Nobody pretty much can hit the shots he was hitting in those games year-round. And so that peak to carry his team that far has done a lot of the work here. But if you look across the season, he actually has a very consistent level of output in big games, in big matches, over and over again, getting underrated by the scene overall, just because, like, you look at the rating for the year, like, oh, a 1.0, whatever the fuck it is, 1.09. What the hell is this? But his KPR has been so good. He's just been killing motherfuckers. And you can't ask much more. Every single game, they get a big game, he kills people. Over and over again. And that's why he's above Frozen. That's why he's above Brokey. He doesn't have as many bad events as they do, in my eyes, despite rating painting that picture. he actually has been solid and consistent at those events, plus has the best peak. So he has to make his way above them. Hit number 10. He could be better. It could be better. Like there's players above him who are riflers who don't have that great a year, but who have better peaks and more events and have like specific details to their game that have been more impactful. But on a team that has struggled to make it deep past playoffs, he's been able to just consistently rack up the numbers and frag and frag and frag. And fragging's half the game.
Yeah, no, I couldn't put him this high. And we've already talked about him quite a bit. I don't
need to elaborate too much, I guess.
Yeah.
But...
I'm going to take my 10 pick. It's going to be Bit.
10?
I think. Yeah.
Damn. Okay.
It's very even. This and the next 3 spots is very even. Very even.
Okay.
And I've shuffled them around wildly over the days, but I've ended up with Bit on number 10. And I might as well, like, he's definitely top 10. I think nobody would disagree with that. It might be better for me to explain why don't put him higher, and that might be he has a little bit of an arena drop off. He drops to 106 from 111. Especially compared to some of the peers I was comparing him to, that is a significant drop off. None of the other 3 who I was comparing him directly to actually drop off that hard. He was one of the big reasons why Navi weren't successful in the spring season. He just wasn't really where he was supposed to be. And I just couldn't really... Compared to some of the others, he could definitely move up 1 spot, but I probably couldn't put him over the others I'm comparing him to be honest. So Bit's going to end up being my number 10. But he's had a great year. And he's had a great... Like, all in all, he's had a great year. It's just the first half of it is quite mid. And that could be said, the inverse of that could be said for my next pick. But yeah, go ahead. Who is your number 9? Or do you have elaboration on Bit?
We'll get to Bit.
Yeah.
My number 9 is Malbs. And for me, it's, well, firstly, people are going to talk about how he hasn't played as many big events. Bro, the fall season is loaded with big events. If you just want to talk big events, he's played plenty. Like, he's played about as many or more than Elysian Nerds. Like, he's played tons.
As a pointer, I'm just going to say, if Mobs is not in your top 10 solely because of map count, if that's the reason why you put Mobs outside of the top 10, you cannot put Donk number 1. He has the same amount of big event maps. You cannot put Shiro top 5. He has the same amount of big events. Like, there is no argument for Boki missing big events because he was there just as much as the Spirit players.
Malbs, but yes.
Sorry.
Yeah, so that's something I had to throw out there because I kept seeing that point made. People are just forgetting that firstly he played 2 big events on M80, but also that the full season was loaded. Like it held about 60 to 70% of the big events total, and he was present in all those. And look, overall, I do hear there are some weaknesses to Malb's season. Like he was another player with a bit of an arena drop off, and I felt towards the end of the year he was slowing down and getting slightly found out in a lot of games, and that was a bit of an issue. But overall, there are so many huge G2 T-sides which are composed of entirely 2 players. It's Malbs ripping things open, everything goes wrong, and then m0NESY closes it. That has been one of the formula that has gotten G2 actually deep in events. It's that T-side. Malbs is insanely impactful, like singularly taking teams apart, hitting impossible shots, and being asked to do so much. And then m0NESY on the other end, at the other extremity of the T half, just closing everything in a manner that no other AWPer could even come close to. That has been the tale of G2 with Malbs. It's been those 2 on the T side, on the opposing ends of the spectrum, opening and closing. And Malbs, for me, he deserves all that credit. I mean, his CT side impact has been a lot weaker. We know that's because his spots are just wrong for him in a lot of maps. And the maps where he does get to be active and be the classic Malbs star, he's able to win rounds for them. So, there's that ultimate dichotomy. He doesn't get credit for things he really didn't do, but he does get credit for those things he massively delivered on. Just a little held back on. I think he doesn't have he has a few iconic maps in playoffs, some insane T-sides throughout playoffs. He just doesn't have an event where he is clearly the MVP of G2. Probably impossible for him to ever be, but, well, not literally, he has the talent for it, but given this year, probably impossible for him to have delivered that. But it's still an expectation for someone who's going to go higher than number 9. Number 9, I still think incredible, considering he played only half a year on a truly tier 1 level team. Sure, about 60% of the calendar, but still. He didn't have much going into it. Thrown in at the deep end on a roster that's pure fragging, very little in terms of mid-rounding and IGLing.
Yeah.
And he's done a fucking good job.
Yeah, I don't actually have him down for that big of an arena drop-off either. I have him equal. His big event rating is equal to his arena rating in what I've taken down. 113 and 113. But then he has a 123 overall in the year. With M80, obviously.
Yeah, I don't count any of that stuff.
No, whatever the discrepancies in our stats are, yeah, Mobs has been excellent. He is one of those 3 players or 4 players I was speaking about that might as well have been joint 7th, as far as I'm concerned, with Bit and Mobs.
I did have that. Yeah. That is that group that I've ordered it in a way that's essentially my differentiator comes down to kind of like success. Because, but I do think, I'll get to it eventually. But no, Mobs.
Yeah. Great pick. My number 9. Sorry, what are we at? Number
I just did my number 9. Yeah, should be your number 9 now.
We reversed the order. I got confused. My number 9 is going to be Brokey, and I put him above because that spring season is near top 5 level. That spring season is near top 5 level. It is near top 5. It's between like that spring season. Look, if I'm just going to bring it up right now, it's going to be Donk is in there. I'm not even sure Shiro would be in my top 5 if I was counting only spring season. Jail is probably there. And Monacy is definitely there. And then Brokey is probably there. Like, Brokey is definitely near top 5 in that spring season with how well they do. How FaZe do play a major final, a Katowice final, and winning Chengdu. And how much Brokey was the fucking guy. Like, how much Brokey was the guy doing stuff for them. So I put Brokey above Robson Frozen. I don't think there was an argument in my mind for Brokey being there. His fall season drop-off is notable. Absolutely. It's pretty huge, to be honest. But that spring season just carries him so hard for me. I just think it's so impressive. That spring season is probably equal to, if I'm just going to do the map count proper, I just put the stats sheet up here. I probably put him equal to Nico at that point. Wherever he might be. That's probably where I'll put him. But yeah, we're not rating him based on only spring season. That's why he drops down to 9. That Chengdu win is all him. Or mostly him. That, like... No, it is. It is mostly him. Am I wrong?
You are. It's not that insane a run. It's a very impressive run. It's a reason that I said is a legit MVP and he makes my top 15 comfortably.
Yeah.
But come on. Come on.
It's mostly him.
Are we smoking?
There were he was there in Katowice, he was doing great. Copenhagen, he was great. He was like, look, if FaZe win that, Brokey honestly is probably a major MVP. They didn't, but it was a great performance nonetheless. I just give a lot of credit to Brokey for this year. Then the fall season kind of fucks it. He still had peaks. He still peaked in stuff like the fall final. That's a great event for him. He had a huge drop off as well. World final. But then he was kind of stably mid in the rest of the events for the fall season. And
he doesn't have a stable extended period. Like he does have very wild drops and peaks across the year.
The spring season is that stable period in my mind. Because he didn't have a
but it's not in that high peak. That's the problem. Like he doesn't really have. It's a bad event in Dallas, yes, but overall, his peak isn't that crazy. Like that's why it doesn't separate him out from the rest of the team. Like in terms of his actual level of play, he's got supporting cast members who are within touching distance of his kill counts and everything. It's not actually that crazy a peak that that it should by itself negate his full season. Like it's not that good.
Yeah. Like I said, it's very even. So in the original draft text, I had him 11th, I think. But then I just kind of... He's big in arenas. He doesn't actually move
11th
anywhere.
Was perfect. 11th was perfect, I think. That's where I put him. Yeah, that's perfect.
He doesn't move in arenas. He's great in arenas. He actually had pretty good op stats compared to fellow oppers. Like, he was pretty good compared to people like Torchi and Wonderful. yeah, that's impressive to me.
He's always been a better rifler than a lot of them, and that's credit.
Yeah.
Like, because his sniper KPR in the spring season is 0.27. Like, it's actually pretty forgettable. He's just a better rifler than a lot of these guys. Straight out, because like Torji, one of his big weaknesses, it's been the case since he was a prospect, has been his rifle play. Like, he's not a good rifler at all. He did have that tool in his arsenal to help separate him from those guys early, and that's why I said 11 perfect for me. Like, I think great. It's just for me that full season too forgettable, and the spring highs not impactful enough. That's how I see Brokey this year. Number 8, are we ready to go?
Yeah, go ahead.
I have Flamesy. And it's one of the most context-dependent ratings here because it's a number 8 for a player who, just for the year, doesn't seem to stand out that much. Like, if you think about just the numbers, how they look on a page, doesn't stand out. But for Vitality, everything they did when it came to big playoffs, big matches, in front of the crowd, Flamesy got better. Flamesy stepped up. Compared to his roles, compared to what he plays like in the group stages where all of a sudden there's no pressure and Vitality have Spinks and Zywoo fucking dominating everyone, where he essentially hasn't got to do a lot. When it comes to the big events where all of a sudden everyone else is starting to crumble, things are starting to fall apart, Spinks is lurking, as in refusing to release his shift key and arriving at bomb sites 30 seconds too late. Flamesy, a hard entry and a fucking anchor, is still putting up his numbers. That is insane. We talk about like Malbs having iconic T-sides. Flamesy doesn't have anywhere near the single like map highs as Malbs does, but given everything going against him, still managed to impress me even more. And over the course of the year, so much goes wrong with Vitality. One thing that doesn't is Flamesy. Big events in 2024, still ends up with like a 1.10 rating. KPR that goes up in the Prestige playoffs, goes up in the arena games. Everything I'd want from a rifler who doesn't have the roles to really be impactful. Like, over the course of the year, he ends up being... he leads, I'm pretty sure, Vitality entirely in trader rating. Like, if you... entrying. Sorry, not trader. Like, yeah, he does more entry work than Apex. And he's still putting up the numbers. He's still dying for the team. Still doing his bit for the cause whilst putting up all these numbers. Yeah, Flamesy, huge year. Deserves way more credit than I think he's going to get from a lot of people. This has been very much the case of a team that without him would be drowning.
Was he nominated for the or finalists for the role-based awards that HLTV are doing?
I don't think he received any nominations.
He was nominated
maybe
for a few,
general nominations, but not. He didn't get shortlisted for any.
He didn't get. No, he missed out on Anchor of the Year to Zontix.
People are entitled to their own opinions, and sometimes they are valid.
Yeah, media conglomerates are entitled to their own opinion. Anyway, I have Flamesy as my number 8 pick as well, and it is...
to be fair, Zontix has been a solid CT player. It's mostly his T play that's a problem, but no, go back. Let's go back.
Yeah, anyway, that has been... I have for exactly the same reasons. To me, he is the reason they win Cologne. I mean, look, Zywoo, of course, but like I do think Flamesy having the level that he has in that playoff, with Spinks also having a bit of a drop-off in that event...
As always.
Flamesy still being there and even improving in those playoff games is honestly what takes Vitality over the line for me in Cologne. It's mostly just the final because they had the semi-final spot and they faced Saw, which is like...
Yeah, didn't need a big fucking win to get past Saw, but...
They won Cologne off the final pretty much alone, but Flamesy is there. He's keeping pace with Spinks in that final. And that's great. He outperforms everybody on Navi as well. It's Zywoo, of course, but Zywoo is always Zywoo. So, like, what you need on Vitality has always been the second best and the third best, and that's what we talk about. And in this case, it is Flamesy. Yeah. Also powering through a bunch of those group stage games, like, to get to the semifinal. That's Flamesy against Mouse entirely. Like, he was always there. No bad games in that Cologne event. Props. Huge arena step up. Like, he goes from 110 to 114 between big events and arena games.
That's insane.
To bring up the percentages again, I'm not sure anybody has a bigger step up when it comes to arena games. I'm just gonna check. No, yes, it's him, JL, and Monacy. Monacy has a bigger one, but it's him and JL.
Monacy is, well, he's obviously later in the show. Let's put it that way. He's quite obviously later in the show.
Yeah, but yeah, Flamesy has been insane. Role context as well, incredible. I can't remember next year when he could very well be he could be a top 5 player next year. Definitely could be.
If he hits the roles, yeah, he could.
Yeah.
He could. It's still asking a lot of him
Yeah.
to step up and keep stepping up in the arenas. There's a reason it's so impressive that he's managed to do it this year. Generally, players get worse in arenas, and it's just scene wide. Like you're not going to put up these crazy stats all the time. So no, massive credit to him. I'm amazed, impressed. We have him in the same place. Number 7. This is where I've bit. And
It's
I feel
fair.
like some people have him in contention for Anchor of the Year. Some people, I mean, I remember Maui on, I believe it was Snake and Banter. It's just like, when he was talking about a lot of the awards being just outright just obvious, he just like waves his hand. It's like Navi Team of the Year, bit, Anchor of the Year. I'm like, Anchor of the Year, not sure. Because he has played Anchor and has been very good, but just specifically anchoring as a CT thing, Yimfat's been better. But overall, anchoring, lurking, well, half lurking a lot of the time on certain maps, having massive game-winning impact. That's the thing. He's had lows, and he's had desperately low lows, and that's been a massive problem for Navi. And I've been critical of that, but he's had event-winning highs. He's gone in and dominated teams on Inferno in grand finals, semi-finals. Like, he's had iconic map after iconic map in these huge events. Not just big events, huge events. That's been the bit story of this year. It's not about just being good a lot of the time. It's been about, in massive games, being elite and game-breaking. And that peak kind of offsetting, for me, the very disappointing parts at the start of the year. Yeah, he's been able to do it time and time again. We still give credit to guys like Alexi and Blade for finding the right way to use him in his skill set. But goddamn, has he been productive in these events. And he deserves it. He deserves it. I can understand him going lower just based off the downsides. But the upside for me was just so exhilarating. And at times, literally event winning. So, credit.
Yeah. For all intents and purposes, Bit, Flamesy, and Mobs are tied for me because Mobs is my 7th.
Yeah, those were my guys. I was confused. When you threw Brokey in there, I was like, Brokey?
I threw Brokey in there because I also, like, when I compared it side by side, I was like, Brokey genuinely could also be tied with these guys. But it's mainly between those 3. And then I just kind of had to shove Brokey in there.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, we've already talked about Bit, and he's excellent. And my number 7 is Mobs, who we've also talked about. It is, for all intents and purposes, tied between them. They might as well be joint 7th. And the only thing I can take away from Mobs, literally the only thing, is he did miss a couple of events, which is not a significant. To me, it doesn't matter. To me, it doesn't matter. But like, I could take away from that. And also, his CT side is kind of mid, even with the roles he has. He's outperformed by players like FlameZ. He's outperformed by Bit and Jimpat. So it's a bit.
Yeah, but they don't. As the point of why they're the wrong roles for him is more about it doesn't match his instinct. Like, it doesn't match his play style. Like, he's obviously just trying to walk whilst tied to a tree. Like, it's just wrong.
Yeah, but I also can't rate him based on where I think he would be in better roles. That's the only thing I can take away from him.
Yeah.
He has been fucking excellent. Yeah, I can't. No notes. He's been great, and I'm also probably is. With the way things are going, probably is a top 5 player next year. I think Mobs will honestly be.
If he gets Nico CT roles as expected and Heavy God doesn't slip into them, then yeah, I assume he probably maintains his level, probably gives you an extra kick to the CT side, and yeah, top 5 is reasonable.
Yeah, with how things are going, I think he will be. So yeah, that's my number 7. If you had Mobs anywhere lower than 15th, you should move to another game. Please don't watch this esport. Like, don't have opinions on it. It's
you're wrong. You're just wrong.
You are wrong. You are wrong. You don't know the ball. You don't know ball. That's
ball.
it.
No. Yeah. We're counting. You don't know mouse, man. You don't know mouse.
You don't know mouse. You don't know mouse and keyboard.
Don't know M and K, bro.
You don't know gaming carpet. Yeah.
Number 6. I have Shiro. Realistically, a conversation could be had about him in maybe a top 5 spot, but I just can't overlook his playstyle deficit in a lot of big games. He has had big event runs, where he has been arguably the best player on Spirit. But overall, there's just a few events where he's just too passive, not impactful enough, and doesn't make it far enough for me. Doesn't do enough. But considering the good part, where he's even in these weaker events where he's not impactful enough, the numbers are a bit empty. The numbers are still obnoxiously good. and you can't deny it. And I just have him here because I can't. Yeah, I think I said everything I had to say about him.
Yeah.
He's slightly too passive at times, sure, but he just kills everyone. And he has one terrible event this year. That's Cologne. Nothing else was truly bad. Like, he doesn't ever drop below a 0.7 KPR. He's just been an absolute rock for this team. And overall, yeah, short of top 5 because I don't think he has enough match-winning impact in big events.
Well, he's
But
the second fiddle.
Yeah, he just does so much well. Like, so much well, yes. I don't know
Yeah.
what I'm saying anymore. It's getting long. Quack, take over, save me.
Yeah, I have Shiro as 6 as well, and it's entirely deserved. He's been a great player. Has an arena drop off. That's sort of why I noted him down. He drops off versus the top 10 in arenas and also in elimination series. He does drop off quite a bit. He has an excellent T side. He has honestly a slightly subpar CT side compared to some of the other operas on the list, but he does have an excellent T side, which I think is honestly more impressive than having an excellent CT side, considering the op meta we're in. But it is very much DPR farming as well when we're talking debating. Like, I haven't gone as deep to check arena DPR. I don't know if I could even.
You'd have to do some
that.
like very specific filtering of your own.
Yeah, but like having a 111 rating in arenas, even while that is significantly inflated by having the lowest DPR out of anyone and having a very niche kind of clutch stat, which is going to bring your impact up, even if it's only 105. Like you said, it's playstyle sort of thing, and it's like that. I think that inflates him. I think that's a factor. And even then, having a big arena drop off, I'm sort of wondering where was Shiro in the arenas really. But yeah, it's still impressive. He's won Katowice and a major, and like he's been excellent in pretty much every event which Spirit have played. So yeah, it's good job, and he's my number 6. Also considering for top 5, but in the end that came down to high peaks.
He had to be a part of the conversation, I think, for top 5.
Yeah.
But he didn't make it for me, and it was pretty easy to make that decision.
Yeah.
But all right, next we got our top 5 prospects of the year. Now I've gone a full 10, and they're not really in order. The full 10, like 10 to 5 is just the honorable mention sort of section.
Yeah. Sorry, I have to stand up. I'm getting dizzy. Go on.
Actually, no, it is kind of in order. I have ordered it. But all right, Quacke, I assume we've only got a top 5.
I have a top 5 and 4 honorable mentions, so I could actually rip those off right now. They're not in order.
Right, yeah, go for it.
I should preface, this is not necessarily the 5 best. This is, the number 1 is definitely a deserving number 1, but I have also gone for those which I think I have interesting opinions on. And also there's an element of who I think will be successful as well, like who has a prospect of being successful in the near future. So some honorable mentions is Makaze. Makaze is a top 1 candidate, but I just don't have a lot of opinions on him. There definitely is justification for him to be number 1. I just don't know what it is because I haven't seen him that much, and like the stats speak for themselves. Someone else I have to mention, which is I put him as an honorable because I think he's a borderline, but it's actually ultimate, and he's borderline because he's already played a full season in tier 1. But like the way for the year, the way he came completely out of nowhere has actually really impressed, and I think he has the makings of a really good year in 2025.
Yeah, I can't have Ultimate as a prospect of the year. Just because he's only a prospect from January to June, and he's fucking forgettable in January to June.
Yeah, no, but like that's.
And he's also 21 this year. Yeah, he's a bit old.
How he came out of anywhere? Well, I draw the line at 22. So anyway, next up is a bit of a Sweden pick, but it's going to be Poi. I think Poi is nowhere near performance-wise like being anywhere near prospect of the year, but over the course of the year, the way he emerged as basically in February just spawned as an amazing mechanical player on Little Mix, moved to eyeballers and just hasn't been used. But in their peak games, like when they managed to use him properly, when they managed to have good performances out of him, he holds the CS2 kill record in regulation. And that sort of speaks for itself. Like, I think, and also like it is just from 0 to hero over the year. It's not even the full year. From 0 to hero in half a year. He was the biggest, the most wanted player in Sweden at that point. So that's something which really impressed me as sort of a trajectory over the year. But I can't put him down for like anywhere near prospect of the year in terms of how good he was, because as much as he is that talented, he didn't show it, and that's partially down to the team he chose to join, I think. Because yeah, and then final honorable mention, which is somebody who, it's a backwater region, but I think he stands out from some of his fellow talents in this region, and it's going to be Netic. I think Netic is something we haven't seen in a good while. Because as much as we have riflers who emerge and do really well in local play, Netic is the only one in a while which consistently beats FlyQuests, or like consistently performs really well against FlyQuest. He also performed fairly decently while his very talented teammates fell off when they went to Europe with Talon. Netic still performed at a decent level. I just think Netic is like, you could have said the same when we're looking at rating, 120 rated Australian riflers. It could just as well have been Dexter. It could just as well have been Vexite. It could just as well have been pretty much anybody. But Netic is just something different because he's played FlyQuest and he's actually consistently performed at basically the same level against them. So if there's anybody out of Australia who I think has a prospect of being a good player in the near future on a good team, it's going to be Netic over Ins, because Ins, his time has passed. So I just had to put Netic in because he is on top of all of the rating sheets. It's just very much farmy. So, but I've seen some stuff which just makes me think that this guy might be a bit more legit than literally anyone we've seen since JKS.
I wanted you to be right on that.
Yeah.
And then he came to Europe and I watched him play Counter-Strike and he's not. It's just not impressed me. His best map he's played in EU Counter-Strike was a pretty impressive showing against Rebels on Anubis, I think it is, yeah. But then you look at the other events he's played with these guys and he's just been butt awful on a team that's pretty bad, but still, like, they've won a series where he's played mid as well, and it's like, he's not on the level of even Navi Jr. Like, he should be able to frag if he's got the talent, but he's not even able to put up his own like KPR numbers against anyone almost, except young ninjas and rebels. Like, come on, he's I think
it's the average against top 20 which has swayed me there, because his average is actually quite.
It's just because he played FlyQuest.
Probably, but
literally, honestly, yeah. Just because he
even then, managing to beat, not even beat, but like managing to perform consistently great against FlyQuest is something that, you know, Vexite didn't do. Nobody else who looked great in Australia did. So yeah, I'm just kind of bullish on him. That's why he's an honorable mention. He doesn't actually make the list.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that all four of your honorable mentions? Yeah.
Those are my honorable mentions. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Let's get into my list. Start at number 10. I'm not going to say too much about 10 to 6 because either you lot will have known enough about them or go watch my videos. Pretty much. So number 10 is Kensizor. Elite Ukrainian talent. Super mechanically gifted, aggressive, very raw on a team that doesn't play that pretty as CS. So probably has a long way to go, but now he's on bait, so awesome. Jaber, prospect from this year, still very young. He had to show a lot of progress quickly this year as they went onto stages, because he started off horribly on stage, and still has this sort of very high ceiling to him, I think, to still go. Because my prospects of the year will be based on current and a lot potential level that they've shown this year. But what they've actually done in the year matters. I've got Nota at number 8. Despite moving to Amcal, who've done their best to try and completely ruin him by playing wrong, he's still been able to put up numbers for them, despite going from like a star player to at times just a bitch entry on a team that doesn't have better closers than him. It's been annoying, but hell, the talent is there. The spray control actually very, very nuts. Something to look out for. 7, I have Susp, because again, this year he was a prospect. It may seem weird at the end of the year to look at wildcard players and be like, prospects? Like, yes, they spent the entire year not playing big events. They just managed to make it through to the opening stage of the major. That's it. Like, that's all they really did in tier 1 play. Susp is as sharp as his twin, with an absolute resolute mindset, it seems. Like, he doesn't seem to shake very easily. When this team went to LAN, he was able to keep his numbers. Playing against big teams, he still delivered. So I've been very impressed with Susp. And just above him at 6 is Flammus, new Virtus Pro player. Spent the year impressing on Namiga in a raw, aggressive capacity. Comes on to Game of Legion. does similar things, but then impressed me really with his ability to just improvise like really effective lurk plays. So it was multifaceted, the things that made me believe in Flammus. And number 5, this is getting to the big boys. I have NPL, IGL, and Star Rifler. Yes, I count him as a prospect. Suck it, it's my show. Honestly, he had a fall off against better competition that I found a bit shocking, but then I remembered he is trying to call and be the best rifler on this team at the same time. So now that they've signed Kenzizor, I feel like we can expect more consistency given opposition from MPL. He still has the mechanics. He still has the confidence and the leadership going into the next year. He's part of that prototypical group, though. Young guy, good fragger, now also calling. He won't be a weak frag in IGL. It's just, can he get the most out of his team? We'll have to see, but certainly one of the most fascinating prospects. Number 4, Jambo. The best AWP prospect in Tier 2, easily. Consistent, solid. Hits all the right notes in terms of his rifle and pistol play. And then also, does everything I want from a modern AWPer right now. Quack, your number 5, number 4. You got them
My number
ready?
5. Yeah, my number 5 is LNZ. LNZ was, for large parts of the year, the IGL up-and-comer on Sangle, and that just, especially with the component that is who is most likely to be successful in 2025, I think LNZ might top my list for that, because I just think he's going to be such a hot prospect for teams who end up needing an IGL. Maybe not in this shuffle, but in that case, in the next. So I'm very bullish on LNZ. We've talked a lot about LNZ, and we talked a lot when we talk about the Sangal team, because he has been one of the components to make it really great. My number 4 is Susp. For the reasons, it's easy to forget that the great period in Metasport was also this year. It's not just the wild
first half
card
of the
part
year,
of it all.
yeah, he was impressive on that team.
To me, that feels like it was last year, but that was in 2024. So yeah, it's a great period on Metasport, even with playing some difficult roles and then being passed up for being benched and having to move on, ending up in wildcard, and he's done a great job there. Making it out of the opening stage of the major is fucking phenomenal. And Sus was one of the big reasons why they did. So yeah, plus rep on him. Should I just carry on, or do you want to take over?
No, I'll let you go on to 3 because my voice hurts.
Yeah, okay. Fear is my number 3 for similar reasons to LNZ. Passion UA. It's really been a year where Fear has done nothing for about 2 years, and Passion UA materialized out of thin air when he joined the team. And since then, they've been doing phenomenal all year. First in Tier 2, they started to move into consistently competing with the top Tier 2 teams online. And then they went to the RMR and they went to the major. And honestly, it's also his energy is unmatched. Seeing them qualify for the major was fucking insane. And that's an IGL which I can really back, and somebody I think will be successful next year. He's rumored to go to Fnatic, and I kind of hope that happens, because I think that's a really good move for him.
Is that really a rumor? Where does that come from?
Yeah. I can't remember if it's the backwater stuff which nobody cares about, or if it's Overdrive. I think what I read was that Passion UA and Fnatic have agreed on the transfer. It just ends up coming down to if Fear wants to stay with Passion or if he wants to go to Fnatic. And I'd go to Fnatic, especially if Jambo is talking to other teams.
Yeah, maybe. All right. My number 3, I have Makaze. Entry fragger supreme, true opener and trade bait type player. Mechanically so fucking cracked. A couple of things mainly refining on his CT play, but honestly, this is about as exciting as he can be right now. Playing very close to Pro Style CS at 17 on a team that consistently beats Spirit Academy. Not that anyone would notice based on the press the players receive. So yeah, Makaze, definitely one to watch. I mean, I'm not sure he's going to get a promotion anytime soon. I don't really want him to, considering how young he is. But he's currently working with another fragging IGL in Krabini, who's a countryman of his. So there may be something brewing in the future there for those two as a duo. But we'll see what comes of that. For him, for now, just a monster in Tier 2 play.
Yeah, my number 2 is Jambo. I just put him a bit higher. I think he was the guy for Passion UA. it's been a big year for them, and I have to give him a lot of credit for that. So I don't have a lot more notes on that. Jambo's just been great. Him with Fear together could be amazing in the next year, and definitely could be future tier 1 mainstays. So yeah,
I'm a little confused here because I've got a number 2, a player I thought you would have here somewhere, and maybe did I fall asleep when you said this guy? Where's Nilo?
I didn't put him on my list. I don't know why. It's an excellent pick. He definitely should be here. He definitely could have been the number 2. But
look, he's basically the prospect of Sweden. Like as much as Poi is like, the wonder boy. Poi hasn't played like that half the year. Nilo has played like that all year.
I have to admit here, this is me forgetting that Medisport were good in 2024 and not in 2023. I genuinely thought that like Nilo's good period was last year, but it was literally. I think in my mind I separated the spring and fall season too much when it comes to Medisport. For some reason, it just feels like an entirely different era. But yeah, Nilo should be here, definitely. Yeah,
definitely should. And look, he's put up sick numbers, but more importantly, he does so much so well, and he can play any rifle role almost. He can open, he can close, he can trade. I mean, you don't want to waste him on being the trade bait, but still, like, he probably would do it pretty well. The way I compare him in videos, I often talk about him like Stown with better mechanics. So make of that what you will. In terms of an endorsement, I do think he is good enough to be playing Tier 1 CS already, and very soon will be amongst the best riflers in the world.
Yeah.
Number 1. Who have you got, Quacke?
Kyosuke!
No way!
You take it away, because I don't have anything to say.
It's so obvious. I mean, if you watch him play, he is about as can't miss a prospect as it comes. Now, the biggest problem he has, really, is that he's on Spirit Academy and plays Donk's roles. That's all that's stopping him being promoted, because he can do everything. He can hit every shot. He can make crazy multi-kills happen. He's fucking insane. Is he better than Mikaze? Yes. Am I still kind of tilted? No one ever talks about Mikaze? Yes. But no, Kyosuke is fantastic. He will be a top player in the coming years. I was hoping that there's one of two things happens in this offseason going into 2025. Either one, he goes on loan to a team like Nine Pandas. I think that would be a good place for him. I think he literally fits Nine Pandas pretty well. Or they transition him within their own academy play to playing Sontix's roles. And they slowly refine that, develop that, and then promote him. Because there's no point promoting him into Donk spots when you still have Donk. So
yeah, it's like Monesi being on Navi Junior. It could just as well be they sell him for $600,000.
I mean, they'd obviously sell him for more than that, but
yeah,
he could just be sold to someone. I find it hard to believe. I'd rather they, as a team, decide to just build a ridiculous monster and just transition him to other roles.
Yeah, I don't want to shuffle him now. I want to in the summer season at the earliest. I want him to leave Spirit. In my opinion.
But yeah, he's the obvious number 1 of the year. It's been all about him. Maui had the audacity to talk about him on streams. So now every pleb talks about Kyosuke like they are an authority on the topic.
Dude.
But still.
Whoever leaked, I don't even know if it's accurate, that Vitality were at one point looking at Donk but decided against him, was so stupid, because now everybody thinks Kyosuke can play on literally any international team.
It's absurd.
So
yeah, let's move on to the final question of the episode. It's a question from a guy you may have heard of. His name's Quacke. Some questionable takes here and there, and probably a big fan of the show. I'd say he's a bit of a stan. He's always stalking us, talking to us. But we have to respect the question. He's a member. Biggest what if of the 2024 season. Now, I'm going to be honest, this is the question I've prepped the least. But do you have a good answer for this random guy's question?
I think, honestly, what I was thinking when I asked the question is that my answer would be, what if Spirit had won Copenhagen? Because that's a whole different year.
What if they'd won 3 series they didn't?
What if they'd won 3 series they didn't? Partially because they didn't have any practice. Vitality were kind of shit going into the major. They had missed playoffs in Katowice, and I think their world final was also pretty damn mid. And they would have probably played Vitality in the upcoming series. it definitely felt like Spirit were going to win the major if they beat FaZe, and then they didn't. And it was extremely close, and we've talked about this several times since then, that they had illness, and like that's obviously made it difficult to practice and stuff. And like, if they win that major, I think we might reach a point where Navi make changes in the summer season. We end up with Navi not being the best team in the world because they have a fresh team. We might end up with FaZe making changes in the summer season. We might end up with an entirely different year at that point. And I don't know really what to think about it, but it's just a big what if, because I do still feel like Copenhagen definitely should have been a Spirit major. And I don't think it comes down to them winning 3 series they didn't win. Because Vitality was absolutely a winnable series, and versus Navi was absolutely a winnable series at that point. So, and FaZe was absolutely winnable. It was literally right after they beat them 3-0 in Katowice. Like, it's such a big what if, and I do just wonder what if Spirit didn't get sick, and like what could have happened in that case.
Yeah, I think the better way to phrase your what if is what if they didn't get sick, because they played the games, and they played the game and they lost to FaZe, and we can't really just hit Control Z and just be like, oh, what if they then win the major just magically? Like, they have to be not sick and then make a case for it. But I don't know. A big what if for me. I mean, there's a lot of sarcastic what ifs I can make. Like, what if ZywOo was always playing the group stage and that was secretly the playoffs?
Yeah.
You know, something absurd like that. But I don't know. What if the stage wasn't rushed at Copenhagen?
I think, honestly, the biggest what if of the 2024 season barely counts, and it's what if m0NESY said yes.
That's a huge what if.
Yeah, that is a huge what if.
But it's for next year, really.
Yeah, it is, but it would have happened in 2024. So, what if?
I don't know.
What if G2 hadn't cut JKS? But that's last year.
Yeah. What if G2 stuck with Hooksy and given him Malbs? What are we talking about now? Era defining? Easily.
Yeah. Team of the year.
Comfortable. But they didn't. They decided to go with Snacks, and I got a bunch of views out of it and some hate. Love it.
Perfect.
That's all I want out of my videos, really.
Yeah, G2 are just dog shit. Leave a comment.
Yes, please. Tell us how much better they are. Also, Na'Vi fans, it was a fluke. Please comment about it again.
Yeah. FaZe got donked. Magic's did nothing.
Yeah, Magic's played one series well, and
Robs shouldn't get a graffiti.
All the controversies at once. And you know, Device, kind of ugly. He's a solid 4. He's a solid 4. All right, let's keep it serious. Let's keep it real. Let's go to the final top 5. I just want to go straight to it.
I'm going to be straight honest. I think we have the exact same list here.
Is your number 5 the one, the only, the pretty boy with the girlfriend?
Yeah.
It's JL. It kind of has to be, and the reason he doesn't go higher, because he has been so amazing for Na'Vi this year in big events, and especially the major he won them. Let's be blunt, he won them a major. Some of those shots, I was in that arena, I was losing my voice, screaming, what the fuck, every time he'd hit these absurd shots or make these ridiculous plays happen. It was a ridiculous performance to carry a team to a major like that. One of the most MVPs of a major ever. Because, sure, he has the maps that he's bad, the maps they don't win, but the maps where he's good, he's just breaking the game in order to get them round wins. So, yeah, huge JL year. Great in arenas year round. Couple bad events, especially towards the end, and then also just in the middle. Post Copenhagen Major, after their Fluke Major, where they went out in groups, back-to-back events. Yeah, he wasn't great there. Hence the Fluke title of all this. But yeah, he was able to recover going into the fall season. Had some really strong event runs still in order to keep him ahead of Shiro. So yeah, a very peak-heavy pick, I think. But damn, those peaks were fucking strong.
Yeah, it is for me as well. As somebody who didn't really want to pick peak-heavy players before, JL is just so peak-heavy, I can't really deny it over someone like Shiro. Yeah, just an excellent player. He has great performances in both arenas and elimination games and versus top 10. There's really nothing I can dock this guy on except maybe his KPR average is a little bit here and there, but that's also like it's so high in those high peaks that I can't really dock him for that either. Like he's a beast mode.
Yeah, 7th highest KPR of the players I tracked in Prestige playoffs, 0.72. Like that's it. That is his average, but most players dip strongly in Prestige playoffs. So
yeah,
the fact that he's actually able to maintain it is impressive. And the player ahead of him, well, I think we both have. There's no way you've put ZywOo here, so it's Nico, right?
Yeah, it's gonna be Nico.
Yeah, Nico. What a year! More elite rifle play from the man whose peak never seems to end, just never. And whilst he doesn't have, personally, I think any MVPs for this season, like cause it's all for this year, because it's all been Munacy in terms of the actual MVP recipient. He's just been the second best rifler of the year. That's just how I see it. So much impact, so delivered often, just time and time again. Key openings, key rotations. He just does it all at such a high level. But yeah, number 4. It's not prime Nico as in, the best of the player in the world sort of contention.
No, he would have been top 2, top 3 probably.
But his peak still continues, and it's still fucking impressive and impactful.
It's really impressive that I think he's beaten Device in terms of like career longevity and career like the length of his peak. Device used to be that guy who was like top 20 however many years in a row, but now it's Nico. Excellent in arenas, excellent elimination, which is what I valued quite highly. Excellent on both sides. KPR high, ADR high. EVPs, he's everywhere because he was literally everywhere. He did fall off in like one event, I think, and that was Rio, I think. But everybody did except for
6 EVPs,
yeah.
From what you think,
but I didn't have a case to put him higher because the rest of the other 3 are just. Well, the next one, I'm just gonna go on that then. Our number 3 is gonna be ZywOo.
No.
Oh, sorry.
I wanted more fanfare for the top 3. That's all I wanted.
Okay.
We'd said enough, but we wanted more fanfare.
They are
the big top 3, like
a layer above literally everybody else. They are.
Yes, they are. Like, they truly are. There's no debate in terms of like who should be top 3. The 3 players were set 4 months ago, I swear.
Yeah,
but
there's a lot of different arguments you can have against ordering these. Though.
No, because there's one player who's number 3, and if you think otherwise, you're wrong. That's all it is.
I don't think otherwise, but I don't think it's as clear cut as some might make it out to be.
I'm going to make it as clear cut as possibly can be. It is no debate. ZywOo number 3. If you don't have him number 3, you're wrong. Let's put it bluntly. He fell off in playoffs and in arena games far too often.
Yes.
And far too harshly. And fans will desperately cling to the maps where he plays well, and they overlook the ones where he has every opportunity to win his team rounds and just misses shots and doesn't make the plays. And that's what limits him from being in contention for number 1. I mean, add to that the fact that he only wins Cologne this year and doesn't even win it with his most impressive run. Like, that's, as far as KPR stands, that's his 3rd worst for the year, is Cologne. Like, the event where he actually wins it, he has the most help. I mean, kind of unsurprisingly, but still, like, he does get a lot of help in that run, and it's not his usual dominant self. So ZywOo, I think, falls short in those sorts of metrics. If you look, as I said before, if the year was just studios and group stages, he's probably the best. Like, it's probably a conversation with Donk, but still, he's like up there. Like, it's ZywOo 1 or 2 if there's just the group stages, but the playoffs, incredibly important. He wasn't good enough this year. Still elite, still clearly a step above Nico and JL and all the other top players, but I think for me there's everyone, then there's ZywOo, then there's the top 2. That's where the conversation really happened.
Yeah. The only argument I think you can have for the top 2, for him making top 2, is consistency, because he didn't have any bad events beyond Copenhagen, which was his worst event.
And he was consistent.
Well, Katowice last place as well, but yeah, like he didn't have bad individual events in my opinion, because he had every single event bar Katowice and Copenhagen, the first 2 events of the year. Then he went on a streak where every single event is 0.8 KPR or above, which in the
group stage,
event overall, but yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, no, but
He
that's the
also,
problem. He ends up
yeah,
with overall 0.8. You look at his group stage numbers, 0.9. You're like, what the fuck happened? Oh, right, the
yeah,
playoffs happened.
yeah.
And that's
That's
the
true.
issue.
But still, because then you have when we're comparing him to Monacy, for example. Monacy has several events below 0.8, even when they did make it deep. Monacy has like a huge drop off, which doesn't even compare to Zaiwu's biggest drop off. Even in events where like Esports World Cup, Monacy was pretty mid. That's one of his worst events, even if they did make the final. So it's a bit. That's the argument you can have for Zaiwu. I don't have it.
It's
Zaiwu is my number 3. Yeah, but the consistency is like if you value consistency over anything else, then Zaiwu might have a case, but he doesn't, in my opinion, because Monacy has consistency where it matters, which is in arenas and big games. Monacy goes up to a 139 in arena games.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. Like, quite simply.
Yeah, that's higher than Donk's big event average, period, in just arenas. Like, yeah, it's an entirely different matter. Monacy is our number 2, and I would assume. But there is, like, it's also not as clear as I think it could be, because Monacy also has a lot of consistency, especially compared to Donk. He does have the bigger tenure in terms of map count. He does have that big arena performance, which Donk just doesn't have. Donk actually does drop off in both arenas and elimination games. There are some arguments you can make. I think Monacy also is pretty much equal to Donk in that he is the guy who wins stuff for G2. And he was the MVP in every single event G2 won, and very deservedly so, I think. I don't think Nico... There was no event where I think Nico touched him in terms of MVP candidacy. But the 3 events G2 won, Monacy was MVP in all 3 of them. And I think that weighs quite heavily, because that's something I would give against... That's something I would, like... If it wasn't the case, if it was the case that Monacy was great across the year, but it was Mobs or Nico winning the events, then I would probably demerit Monacy for that, for sure.
Yeah, but you can't, because it didn't.
Because it wasn't the case.
Here we are.
Yeah, here we are. Monacy is number 2, and that's going to leave Donk is the number 1.
Yeah, so just to jump in on Monacy firstly.
Yeah,
so he is my number 2, but this was the one I actually wrestled with. I said it, and some people were like, oh, how could you possibly ever? What are you, retarded? It's like, yeah, no, I watched a year of Counter-Strike and came to a conclusion, because I have a brain. It was difficult to separate him and Donk, because Donk did have lows, of incredible lows. And whilst you can point to KPR stats and be like, look, Prestige Playoffs, KPR 1.01, you're like, yeah, you can't deny the fragging. You never have been able to deny the raw fragging of Donk. And the case that I'm making for him does rely heavily on it. But Monacy is on a team where they needed him to win rounds that were destitute, that were broken, that were ruined, that were poorly called, where everyone had died in stupid spots. He won clutches at a rate with the AWP. On the T side, no one else manages. Like, as an AWPer, you should not be able to do what he does. And that's why it was so impressive. The fact that he then goes into arenas and just his rating skyrockets is insane. And you know why it skyrockets? It's not because his KPR goes ballistic. He never like hits that sort of 0.95 or 1.0 KPR. It's mostly because he's then winning more clutches. He's actually even more clutch. He's better in the late trades, the situations which also highlight Yimfat, highlight Monacy to almost the same extent. If you need a clutch, you look to Monacy. And his T-side clutch numbers are what's really out of this world. So, no, Monacy is the guy on G2. It's not even close. If he doesn't pop off, they don't win the event. That's pretty much how it works. They were able to, at the EWC, they had a pop off from Nico that got them to the final. That's about it. Yeah. Like, he needs to be that guy to salvage the broken round, salvage when everything goes wrong, but the system doesn't make any sense. He needs to come in there and frag out. And that's what he's done consistently. So I have Monacy at 2. And the reason Donk ends up at 1, man, fair fights is a fascinating metric. But it gave me so much. Because if you look at the way Spirit play, so much relies on Donk winning fights. He has to just be Donk for them to have a chance. There's not a lot in terms of depth of firepower, contingency plans. You know, you can't rely on Shiro to clutch the way he did in Players and Gambit. He's not quite that Shiro. He's still clutch, but he's not that clutch. So you look at Donk and you think, damn, he's got to win so many duels. He must be super well set up. he's having to win fair fights, which means both players are looking the same direction, and whoever kills the other one first wins. And he does it at the rate of an AWPer. But better. But still slightly better. That is absurd. That is absurd. Ridiculous. He is outperforming everyone, despite not necessarily being that well set up to do so. It's why I had to be tempered in my review of Chopper and Halley, really, because I'm like, I can't give you like Team of the Year credit as coach in IGL, like, you know, give you guys credit being on top of it, because you just had this boon of a player you don't even have to really do that much for. He just wins fights. And yeah, he has 2 insane event runs in terms of Katowice and the Shanghai Major. Historic runs. Like, most players can never achieve that in their lifetimes playing Snow Sweet Snow. He did it twice in the same year at prestige events.
Yep.
Ridiculous. Ridiculous. Just, go ahead, because there's not much more to say. Like, that's insane.
The Katowice run is the highest rated event run, big event run of all time. It beats out Nico's 1.70 by some decimal. I think Nero said on HLTV confirmed. He's top 1 because he's done something literally nobody else has ever done. That's the period, especially as a rifler. I think that's the top 1. Like, nobody else has ever had a year like this. Nobody else, ever. Like, as a rifler. And then you can point to the meta. Yeah, all right, fine. But you still had Monacy inside who couldn't do this. You had no other rifler who could do this. So it's amazing. The things you can take away from him. There are 2 main things I think you can take away from him. In elimination games, he goes to 120. And in the arena games, he goes to 127. Not great compared to his rivals. The big kicker, which actually had me wrestling with this, is that when you look at their performance versus each other, Monacy and Zaiwu maintain about 125 versus Spirit, Vitality, and G2, respectively. Donk actually drops off quite heavily against both G2 and Vitality to about 1.8, 1.07, or 1.08 and 1.07, I mean. Which is kind of significant. And I haven't looked at, like, how has that looked in the past years? Like, did Get Right drop off against Virtus Pro? Did, you know, etc., etc. I haven't checked if that's a factor. On the off chance Donk is not HLTV's number 1, I think that's going to be one of their kicking factors for a while. So it's not as clear cut as it could be, but Donk is the number 1, and I just like, on principle, he's just done shit that you cannot do. I think if like, let's say FaZe win that final, I think Donk is the only person ever who has ever had the case to be a second place MVP at a major. Honestly, because I think that Shanghai, like, if FaZe somehow win that final, unless that implies Donk also completely fucked up the major entirely, but like, Donk is probably, I would say Donk 149 in a final is the only case anyone has ever had for a second place major MVP. And it's just, I can't give it to anybody else. It has to be Donk number 1, and see you in 2025.
Yeah, that pretty much has to be it. The bow on top.
Yeah.
Donk Player of the Year. I mean, again, it is more of a conversation than people implied. But it's, god damn it, hard to pick anyone else, really, when you just get into the fucking peaks he had. The fragging numbers, the power, the fucking fights he had to take with a rifle. Insane. Player of the Year. Congrats. And that's our show. Tight 3 hours and 3 minutes.
I need to be at a dinner. I need to be at a dinner in 17 minutes.
Have fun. If you enjoyed, leave a like. If you want to see more, sub. Remember, members get access to bonus content and the right to vote, etc. You know, this good stuff. Leave a comment on us your thoughts on all these awards. Which of our picks was super controversial, etc. Remember, the Na'Vi Major was a fluke. And we'll see you in the next one.